straight into the WhatsApp group?
Yeah, I'm not actually in that group, you know. Pop me in there. Yeah, you've got me on anyway on WhatsApp. So yeah, pop me in there and I'll. Oh, we're actually live. Okay, yeah. Give me 2 seconds. Let me get. Hello everyone, I hope you had an enjoyable lunch, enjoyed the food and a bit of an opportunity to network with your peers. That's kind of the other half of the coin when you come to events like this. So hopefully you foster some good connections and you can continue to maintain those if you're making your way to the boat party this evening. So just another plug for that, it'll be a lot of fun. Who doesn't like to see some landmarks whilst sitting on a boat on the river? So yeah, in this room we have an amazing presentation coming now. We had a talk earlier, a panel actually, all about looking at metaverse and AI and what that future might look like. So now I'm really excited to welcome our next speaker of the day, and that's Christina Sang, who is founder of the Metaverse Institute, and she'll be talking in more depth, once we whiz back to the beginning, about metaverse in the age of singularity. A bit of a question of doom or boom. So put your hands together for Christina and we'll welcome her to the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I forgot to do that.
Is it working now?
Yep.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So some people would tell me that the metaverse is a new thing. Is that true? If you looking back, the whole idea started in 1992 by Neil Stephenson in his book Snow Crash, so that's like 40 years already. And the world's first metaverse platform is called Second Life, created by Linden Lab, based in San Francisco in 2003, nearly 30 years. And what was really interesting is Second Life is still up running, and at its peak time, it generates about nearly $500 billion US dollars economic impact on an annual basis, which is quite impressive. And a lot of you talking about virtual properties, real estate, and that's also nothing new. As early as 2006, yeah, the world's first virtual millionaire was called Angie Chen, and she was nicknamed by CNN as Rockefeller of Second Life, and she made profits entirely from selling beautifully architecturally designed virtual property in Second Life. So a little bit about me, and some of you know I started a little bit early, so in 2006, when I was studying at Loughborough University in the UK, I was doing my master's dissertation on using Second Life, the world's first metaverse platform, to develop international strategies for universities worldwide. And then, very luckily, I received a full scholarship to continue my research in the field, but in entirely different subject area, in civil and building engineering. So I was using digital twins, another buzzword, in the metaverse environment to simulate, augment, and optimize real-world construction, engineering, architectural projects, which I completed in 2012 on top of elected full-time sabbatical position with the National Union of Students UK. So if you remember your happy days with NUS, with extra card, give you lots of discounts. That was the organization I was working for, representing 1 million international and European students studying at 600 higher education and further education institutions in this country. So that was a lot of fun. So what we have been through is really the second wave of the metaverse attempt for mass adoption. And as you can see, I really like this graph because it's telling you any kind of advanced technology, when you try to get people to buy into it, it's never, successful in one go. It's normally ups and downs, and you can see clearly the peak of the whole metaverse, like hype, really taking place when Meta changed their name, which really gets worldwide sensation. Now, let's talk about something slightly controversial. Technological singularity. Any of you heard about this? Raise your hands. Oh, wow, quite a few. So I chose a relatively positive and neutral definition about the singularity, and it's actually by one of the publisher, the Britannica, encyclopedia, which has been in existence for more than 255 years, since Victoria time, which is amazing. And they are very rigorous and authoritative in the field of scientific knowledge. So their way about defining the singularity, they said, it's a theoretical condition that could arrive in the near future when a synthesis of several powerful new technologies will radically change the realities in which we find ourselves in an unprecedented manner. And most notably, we're talking about involving computer programs which have become so advanced to the point that the intelligence of machine exceeds the intelligence of human and have massive societal impact. So that's the definition. Sounds a little bit scary, right? And this graph is also quite interesting. It is published by the Time magazine. And what they are looking at is a whole historical review on the technological advancements throughout human history. So if we're looking at the very starting point about agricultural revolution up to the point of the first industrial revolution, it takes 8,000 years, quite long. And then moving from the first industrial revolution to the invention of light bulbs, it takes 120 years, significant reduction. And then things start to move really dramatically, quickly. So from the light bulb to the moon landing, it only takes like 90 years. And then when we come to the stage of the World Wide Web, the internet, it's only 20 years. And now we're talking about like the human genome sequencing, that's only 9 years. So you can see that the advancements of technology is really growing exponentially throughout human history. So that's actually going to be even faster with the computing power getting more and more powerful. So there is some really important points you can see here. So according to the Time magazine, they said in 2015, actually, the intelligence of AI will exceed the intelligence of mouse. And in 2023, the year we are in now, they believe that we will have a situation of singularity, which means the intelligence of machine exceeds the intelligence of human. I don't know if any of you have heard about the news that I think it was last year, one of the Google employee, and he basically made a public announcement that the AI model he was training started to have feelings. And I think the most interesting thing about that statement is not because he was fired as a result, but because he was willing to make such dramatic public announcements, which caused him really costly, impact. So if AI is already in a stage of manipulating or influencing individual human beings' major life decisions, that's quite terrifying. And also, I'm sure you probably have seen some recent news that I think the first one, maybe we'll talk about that later. So let's talk about what would life be like of the technological singularity. There are two arguments proposed by different scholars. And the first scenario is we will have a situation where a machine becomes so smart and they will start to create their own technology, which will grow exponentially. And that will surpass the intelligence of all human beings as whole. So if we go back to this chart, you can see at that end, it forecasts by 2045 is a year where the intelligence of machine will exceed the intelligence of all human beings combined, which is quite scary again. So that's the first scenario. And perhaps the most familiar scenario to all of us, because of the movie Terminator, which was produced in 1984. And I still remember every time Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, "I'll be back." So maybe we will make some friends with some good robots who will be on the side of the humans, so we don't need to necessarily feel so worried about the Skynet as predicted by the movie. Another scenario is more talking about the merge of human and machine in lots of cyberpunk movies, cartoons, and books. So they're talking about the opportunity to have a new form of intelligence, combining the very best of machine as well as human. So one of the typical example is Ghost of Shells, and I quite like Scarlett Johansson, but that's still quite scary, right? Another one is Alita. So I think for these scenarios, I think there is going to be a lot of ethical issues on how we deal with the relationship between human and robots moving forward. Are we going to be companions, friends, lovers, colleagues, or are we feeling comfortable to allow AI to be the future politicians representing both the needs of robots and humans? It's going to be extremely controversial. And I asked that question 7 years ago when I was debating with a group of the world's top leading legal professionals. So we were looking at how to define the human rights versus rights of robots, especially in terms of employment. So it's hugely controversial, but all those law professors and the chief counsel of major technology companies, they thought, we are not going to face that situation in our lifetime, but it seems to be not really the case because we are moving a little bit too fast. So that's scenario 2. The beauty of this scenario is every single one of us, especially humans throughout history, we always want to achieve, eternal life. So maybe this will allow us to achieve eternal life, but is that something we want to do? That's a big question mark. Now, let's forget about all the theory, looking at what's happening now, generative AI. You might remember since November last year, the arrival of generative AI really sweep around the world in a very short time. Within 2 months, they have more than 100 million active users. That's the best adoption of any consumer product in history, which is amazing. But then there are all kinds of interesting things start to flourish. The first thing is a lot of people say the metaverse is dead as a result of generative AI because at least on the face value, a lot of investment which used to focusing on metaverse, Web3 is now all jumping into AI. And also I think another really interesting thing is I personally wouldn't agree that metaverse is dead because if you're looking at business investors, they seem to be changing focus into something which can generate more revenues in the immediate term. But if you have a look on lots of UN government agencies, their move is fascinating. For example, Interpol, we know they are the world's largest police intergovernmental organizations. So in October last year, they actually unveiled the first global police metaverse. So they are really into it. And actually yesterday I was in Tech UK, engaged with a discussion with the Home Office and the London Metropolitan Police, looking at how to regulate the metaverse to ensure it's safe. What should the police do to ensure we are all, can make proper business or fight against criminal activities? Another area is also on safety is conducted by the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. So in November last year, after the generative AI hype, so what they were doing is they are looking at how to safeguard the metaverse from terrorism and violent extremism. And of course, in this year, ITU, which is the International Telecommunication Union, as some of you, they are the UN agency, set up lots of technical standards for cybersecurity, AI, and lots of other quite important things. They set up their first working group on looking at how to provide international standardization, especially on technical side, for the metaverse. And I was very lucky to be appointed as vice chairman for their working group, focusing on sustainability, inclusion, and diversity. And then we all know that for any kind of digital economy to flourish, you need to ensure intellectual property rights are properly protected. So in March this year, WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, organized 2 days high-level summit with nearly 200 member states around the world, looking at how to set up regulatory framework to ensure all the creators within the metaverse economy get their IP rights. And I was lucky to chair their opening session. So there is a lot of things going on at this moment, and so is UNESCO. They are looking at how to use metaverse for training, education, which I'm sure a lot of you who are here, probably you have colleagues who are working in that field. So my feeling is sometimes investors and entrepreneurs, they are quite subject to in fluctuation in the short term. So if something suddenly gets less attention, they probably will be pause and watch. But governments, they are looking at longer term. So we're talking about maybe 5-10 years time. They think this is coming anyway. So it doesn't matter how the private sector responds. They will still commit to the field. That's why I think all of us should be absolutely confident that the metaverse, the Web3 activities we are currently devoting our time to is worth it in the longer term. Yeah, I can give you another really interesting example. If you have a look on the whole AI discussion, AI actually experienced 2 major winters throughout history. So it didn't arrive into the current high position just overnight. It started all the way from 1962, and for the first winter, it took place in the 1970s. When a major researcher, he published a paper looking at the current government investment into AI over the decades. And his argument is basically saying that all the money is wasted because it doesn't really deserve the kind of economic impact and research outcome everyone has expected. As a result, the UK government paused all research funding for AI for about 7 years. So the whole thing goes into completely pause for such a long period of time. And then it started to pick up a little bit, but then again, later it experienced another winter time. So I think if we are only start for our second phase of the metaverse, we can be a little bit patient. Our time will come. But what was really interesting about generative AI global landscape at this moment is it allows you to really use text prompt to create images, videos, and now 3D objects. I think that's actually super interesting and powerful. So instead of saying that actually generative AI is taking away all the oxygens for the Web3 metaverse to flourish, actually it's going to be the largest contributor to push mass adoption of metaverse on a global scale. This graph is actually produced by Circus Capital, so one of the leading VCs in the world. They are really confident about how generative AI is going to push for more productivities of metaverse environments. So you can see here, actually, we are at a stage where text to 3D objects related generative AI apps, they are just about to mature this year. So this is going to be massive news for all of us who are creating different metaverse and Web3 projects. I can give you 3 examples which are very promising at this moment. So in April this year, there is a company based in San Francisco. They are launched really high resolution, realistic 3D avatars, which can be generated very quickly. That's one. Another thing is, if any of you are working in the developer or game industry for a while, you probably know that the most challenging simulation is how to use text to generate 3D human actions, because there are so many unlimited potentials. But what happens is this year, some researchers in the University of Tel Aviv, based in Israel, they came up with a really interesting model. So all you need to do is use their model to put a text prompt, and it can create multiple prediction of different human behavior. Say, give me a kick. They probably create kick in many different directions, which is really, really cool. And also another thing which I find quite interesting is from NVIDIA. So what they have been doing is you just need to prompt a very short text message, they can automatically generate you hundreds, if not thousands, of 3D models at the same time of different variety, from animals to like furnitures, houses, cars, etc. And they can give you all kinds of different variation, which is very powerful. Imagine we use that to populate the virtual world. How convenient and exciting that would be. But that's not even the most exciting bit. I remember in October last year, Google came out with the Dream Mesh, which got me really excited. So I was playing on that platform for a while. So I tried Give Me a Squirrel, and in 2 hours time, that platform generated a 3D, like a low resolution squirrel, which is very impressive. But then, 3 months later, in January this year, NVIDIA have a new platform called Magic 3D. What they did is they can generate high-resolution text to 3D objects, only half of the time of Google. That's only 3 months. Imagine, you remember the graph I was talking about, how quickly technology can grow exponentially. It will continue to grow in the same pace. I think a lot of impossible things we never dream about before is going to become reality very quickly. So my personal prediction is, I think within the next 1 year or 2, we're going to have text to 3D digital twins or text to 3D virtual world metaverse. So that will be massively powerful. And this is also quite new. I'm not sure if you have seen the news. That literally took place 2 days ago. So basically what NVIDIA now is doing is they create a new platform called Omniverse Avatar Cloud Engine for gaming. How many of you are playing like games? All of you. You know, they normally have, when you play computer games, they have this NPC, non-player characters. And now they basically will use the AI to write the NPC without any preset like guidance. So you are interacting with AI NPC in real time, and they will respond to your request in a way no one can predict. Sounds amazing, right? It's almost like Westworld. You see that TV series. It can be quite powerful. There is a lot of discussion about how powerful generative AI is going to boost the economy, and at this moment, we're talking about $200 billion in the next 10 years, at a growth rate of about 34% every single year. That's massive. But if you put that in the very exciting prediction by the Citigroup, when they're talking about we are going to have a metaverse economy between 8 to 13 trillion by 2030. I think with generative AI, maybe we only need half of the time to achieve that economic impact, or even shorter. Who knows? So that's why it's actually getting more and more exciting now. So the way forward, I want to bring your attention to a few really important advancements in the scientific field, which are going to have a major impact on everything we're doing now. And the first thing is quantum computing. I was speaking at The Economist commercializing quantum technology last month. And one of the really interesting things I want to share with you is, you might remember in 2019, Google made a major announcement about they have achieved quantum supremacy. Remember that, right? And what they are talking about is they have developed a quantum computer which is 158 million times faster than any existing supercomputers we have. And what that means is using this computer, they can generate the computing power which used to need 10,000 years to solve. Now it's only 4 minutes. That's the difference. Imagine this computer power is used in our daily life. It's going to like completely change everything. And computing power is not the only thing we're talking about. We're also talking about content sensors, content communications, and for content communications, it's really going to have a massive impact on cybersecurity. Again, a lot of people are worried about like hacking, cybersecurity related issues to do with metaverse. Content communication is going to address that. But of course, a lot of people are also worried that content computing are running too fast, that a lot of blockchain will be cracked. But at the same time, we have a lot of companies who are developing content-resistant algorithm to ensure blockchain of the future will be efficient and safe. So my perspective is we will face a lot of issues as entrepreneurs, innovators, investors. But there are always more solutions we can provide to make things work. I was very excited last year when the Nobel Prize winner for physics was announced, because as you can see, it was given to 3 top scientists who are working on quantum entanglement. What that means, traditionally, computing power is 0, 1, is binary. You can only do so much with this limited computing power. But now, when you can have the parcel being a state of superposition, which it means it's no more just 0 and 1. It can be in 3D, all kinds of different directions. And if you entangle them, they will have the same kind of superposition. You can have 2, 3, or even hundreds, thousands, and they will bring unlimited computing power. That's why quantum computing was able to crack so many massive simulations worldwide. So as a result, you might remember that Joe Biden, the American president, visited the world's largest quantum computing company, IBM, last year, and gave a personal endorsement for their $20 billion investment into quantum technology. And he believed that this is going to help America to assume leadership position in the world of any scientific and technology breakthrough. And that's real. And also, if you see there, that gentleman is currently the CEO and chairman of IBM. He believed that from this year onwards, 2023, quantum computing will have even more fast acceleration to be materialized on our daily life, which will be quite cool. There is another thing we need to all talk about, which I think is quite important, environment impact. Because training AI and also using simulations for metaverse or Web3 blockchain, it consumes super massive amounts of energy. It's not really environmentally friendly, and we all know Ethereum has done a fantastic job to change their models to reduce environment impact by 99.999%. Which is amazing, but still it's a lot of energy. So how can we address that? The issue is currently there are 2 schools of debate. One side they will say, using metaverse, especially digital twin, we can simulate the whole environment impact of the world. For example, NVIDIA has Earth 2, which they use AI machine learning to really looking at how to help government worldwide to prevent extreme weather from taking place. So that's really positive. But the other side, people will say, yeah, you consume so much energy that especially the data center is over capacity now. So how can we address that? So they both are debating really heatedly. No one can really convince each other. So I think if there's opportunity, I should really urge all of you to look into the issue and see if we can do a global analysis to looking at how to maximize the positive impact of using digital twin to optimize build environment, carbon emission on smaller, medium, large scale. At the same time, try to minimize the unused data center, especially we know around the world for any organization, the data is probably only utilized maximum 20%. The rest of 80%, they're sitting there quietly, doing nothing, but consume large amounts of energy. That's not really environmental friendly. So how can we do with those kind of unused data? I think it's a big question. But, as I mentioned, for every single challenges, there is always more solution. I'm really delighted to read from Nature Communication. Some of you probably know Nature is the world's most prestigious academic publication. they published an article in February this year announcing major scientific breakthrough jointly by US and Japanese scientists. So what they have to do is they have figured out a way to produce non-radioactive nuclear fusion, which are able to generate carbon emission-free electricity, potentially at scale. And they said if they can ensure the experiments can be stable for the years to come, there can be a scenario that using this technology, we can power the whole planet's energy by another 100,000 years. So this is going to solve a lot of issues when we're talking anything to do with UN Sustainable Development Goals, because currently, by our current technologies and capacities, there is no way we can achieve that by 2030. It's just a harsh reality. But using this is possible. Okay, let's go back to the technology, especially singularity. So I think the most question lots of people ask is, will we human beings be replaced by AI? This gentleman, you probably have heard a lot from him recently. Yeah, his name is Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, and he is a godfather of AI. He is now currently 75 years old. And what he did recently is he made a quite sensational resignation from Google. And he said there are three major issues that concerns him. The first issue is he feels like in recent months, the advancement of AI has really made him worried. He can't really fall asleep at night. He's worried about it every day. And he's worried that the information generated through AI is going to populate our whole world in a way which never happened before. And we can't really tell what is fake news and what is real news. So that will be an issue. And his second concern, which also started to taking place around the world now, is massive job loss across sectors. I just read an analysis from Goldman Sachs, the famous investment bank, and they predict that in the next 10 years, worldwide, we need to prepare for another 300 million job loss worldwide, which is massive. And what was really interesting is, I remember about 10 years ago, McKinsey produced a report talking about the future of work and skills. And at that time, their prediction is AI will replace the lower skilled job, which are mainly to do with labor. But now what seems to be happening is there are law firms and there are accounting firms, professional services. They are all thinking about using AI to automate data analytics. And I don't know any of you do coding. Any of you? Quite a few. And also coding is one of the jobs AI are actually quite likely to replace. So our days where we create some really beautiful codes and then design an MVP, go for VC, become happy millionaires, billionaires, and early retirement, that days might be gone. So we need to figure out ways how to respond to that. But his biggest concern is actually the intelligence of AI exceed the intelligence of human. He gave a really interesting presentation to MIT recently, and what he described, let me show you. Anyone see this movie, I, Robot, with Will Smith? And you might remember there are a lot of scenes where you see thousands of robots climbing up the tower. And the reason I'm using that photo is because one of Dr. Geoffrey Hinton's biggest concern is if one AI algorithm, they learn something, they can share that instantly with 10,000 AI at the same time. And if each of them doing the same thing with each other, there's no way whatsoever we human beings are going to survive or rival. So that's his biggest concern. So we have people who came out with really innovative but controversial ideas. For example, Elon Musk. You might remember this news was announced on Thursday last week, so fairly recent. Basically, he has been working on this computer brain implants for many, many years, but it never got approved. But last Thursday, FDA in the United States approved for him to start human trial. That's quite significant. although he's saying his main purpose is for medical reasons, so he wants to bring vision back to people who are blind and helping the aging society, because we know lots of people are suffering from Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, they don't recognize their family anymore, which is really heartbreaking. So he tried to use this technology to help them. But I also see some interviews by Elon Musk, and he's saying that actually a chip in the brain could potentially help human race to survive the singularity. Because if we can't beat them, we need to merge with them. So I think that's his longer term plan. And also he said he does not like VR goggles because it doesn't make him feel safe. So he said Neuralink is going to be the ultimate user interface to allow you to have full immersion in the metaverse 24/7. That's his plan. So we will watch. And also another really interesting thing is he believes that once we have that implant in, we will be able to communicate with other fellow humans and machines at the same time. By seeing a lot of brain-computer interface at this moment, you can transmit information from the computer to your brain, but you can't do it the other way around. But I think that will be changing very quickly. This actually taking place 2 days ago. So about 350 global leaders, including the CEO of OpenAI, Bill Gates, and all the Nobel Prize winners and Turing Award winners, they basically came up with an open letter with only 22 words. And they are comparing the rise of AI to the danger of nuclear war as well as the pandemic. So they are calling for all governments worldwide to pay attention to the potential existent, existential threat of AI to wipe out all human beings. So it's not really far away, it's quite serious. So going back to the same scenarios before, I think they are worried about how we can manage that. Personally, I feel like maybe we need is just a little bit more time to figure out how to set up a structure to make sure everything works. And anything we do, we need to put the human needs, human well-being, and human happiness at the very center of any kind of digital future we're developing. Or else, we can make all the money in the world, but we are not going to enjoy it. That's the issue. So, I actually want to twist the arguments around. So AI can develop their own, way of thinking, but maybe we can also use this opportunity and say, if we store all the books, all the videos, all the images of great intellect or leaders in human history, let's say Albert Einstein, and we use that and put it in a AI algorithm and allow this kind of great intellect to guide us on how to survive the singularity or tackle the world's biggest challenges in climate change, inequalities between different parts of the world. Maybe that can be a way forward as well. And we can do that for all the great peoples. Isaac Newton or Alan Turing, you name it. So that can be quite cool. Or maybe we can bring back the US President, Franklin Roosevelt, and ask him to advise us how to survive another potential Great Depression we're experiencing now. So there's unlimited potential. And maybe, I guess, I want to conclude my speech by quoting Albert Einstein. He said, learn from yesterday and live for today. Have hope for tomorrow. I think we have tremendous hope to get this right. And we should do it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A fascinating presentation, Christina, and so full of insights. I know you've got to fly off to another panel in 2 minutes, and so I've asked them to hold in case anyone does have any questions, because there was a lot to unpack there. But if we don't, then she can fly off. But anyone? Go ahead.
My main question is, thank you. So my main concern is the fact that when it comes to AI and we as humans, we always view everything as an us versus them situation. However, if we want to develop AI and it does become sentient in any or in any like manner, then we're flying too close to the sun and the sun will win every single time. However, that's not our decision to make. If it is more powerful than us, if it can lead to global extinction, what if it decides that it's not us and them, it's just us, and it wants to integrate with us, and rather than either getting rid of us or us getting rid of it, we've become one amorphous blob of organic technology.
It's called the pink goo effect.
Yeah. So I know I don't understand this as well as Nobel Prize winners. However, I would feel that it would either get rid of us or it wouldn't be malevolent and it would just want to conform.
Would this then be the direction that Musk is trying to go in with Neuralink and the future?
I'm sorry.
I was thinking more Cybermen, but
Yeah.
hopefully a little bit less kill.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think if the AI can cook for me every day or be a really great nanny to take care of the children, I wouldn't mind to take those kind of jobs.
But what if it doesn't want to do that work? What if it thinks, well, I'm a supercomputer, I'm smarter than every human alive. Maybe it will develop a state of nirvana where it's perfectly fine doing that because it understands that it's not that important, that it's not that deep, and that it's immortal, it can really do whatever it wants. But that would kind of be like the optimal goal. However, if it decides that it doesn't want to do that, what if that's left to us? And then it just wants to spend its life developing whatever it can and reaching for the stars or whatever it decides to do.
I think that's why it's actually really perfect timing for all those 350 tech, business, and scientific leaders coming together to have this open call, including the UK Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. So they want to put in safeguarding measures to ensure this place is safe, responsible, and human-centric, to ensure we have enough time to develop a really responsible future that's going to benefit all humans.
And benefit the AI, assuming it becomes as neurologically capable as us.
I think that we will need to live in a world where we need to learn how to be friends with AI.
Thank you very much. Christina, you've got to fly, so I want to say, everyone, please put our hands together for Christina. Thanks for unpacking the area. And on that note, I would like to introduce our next presenter, so we can fly straight on, because I know we're running a little behind now.
Sorry.
We're going to just get the presentation straight up.
One thing, did I hear
Let's give you a mic.
you said that snow crash was the
Unless you
earliest
have to do this.
example?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Oh, I know snow crash. Well, I did my dissertation on suffered literature in 1992, and so I'm keenly interested in the examples and the whole thing with AI. So you're familiar with neuromance? Okay. Well, I'd like to talk to you soon. Yeah. Good luck with your next presentation.
Yeah, that's mine. Let me just mute my laptop. Christina, don't run away with my mic, thank you.
Sorry. Apologies.
Okay, really excited to introduce our next presenter for the afternoon. We're running slightly behind, but we'll give you the full half an hour all the same. No
It's
worries.
3 o'clock. Am I not at 3 o'clock?
You're in the different room.
Oh, I thought it was on track.
No trouble. So you and Christina together.
Keep it here, yeah.
Okay. Right. So, yes, this is James. James is the Chief Marketing Officer from the Glimpse Group, who's going to be talking about the metaverse separating hype from reality. So yeah, digging down into that. It's an interesting topic. So yeah, over to you, James. I'll get out of your hair and let you get started.
Thanks very much. So yeah, hype. There's a lot of hype out there for various technologies, right? Metaverse, AI, Web3, everything suffers massively. Is that right?
Just a little
How's that?
Keep it going up. Keep it going up.
How's that?
Okay.
although this room, I'm not really sure we really need a microphone, but
Just
you
don't
know,
shout.
makes us feel a bit better having this thing on. Is that all right? Yeah. So I'm going to talk a bit about the metaverse, all the hype that surrounds it, you know, debunk some of the things that are being said about it, you know, talk about articles like this that are getting published. This was in Business Insider a week or so ago. You know, guys, they took a nice bit of effort, even put the years in there, kind of say basically a 2-year life cycle, which is pretty harsh. But why have we got to this position? You know, why are people talking this way? And I'm going to look at some of the reasons for that, why that hype cycle's come about, a little bit about developing on what Christina was saying. I'm also then going to look at some of the common perceptions around the metaverse and kind of pick those apart. And then I'm going to look a little bit to the future and see where we're getting to. If I learn how to use this clicker. Very briefly about myself, I've been in marketing for 20 years. 11 of those years within the immersive tech space. I've been pretty lucky to get in there very early. Oculus DK1 is where I first got involved. I don't know how it came about, because we had a client use it back in my days of marketing, and they did the roller coaster piece that was one of the first experiences, which was terrible. Made everyone feel sick as. I don't know how she actually liked it, but went on to say, yep, let's go do a project, so we did it. And I've done various senior roles within those organisations. I also have a definite mild addiction to LinkedIn. I don't know why I have to say that, just because it makes me feel better. I look at LinkedIn an awful lot, probably too much, but I love it. I think it's great. I get lots of great information on there. So if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn, I'll be ridiculously responsive. So I'm now Chief Marketing Officer of a company called the Glimpse Group. The Glimpse Group is US based. We are NASDAQ listed. A lot of people over here in Europe haven't heard about us yet, but we are a very large, independent, immersive technology company. And what that means is we are global, we operate in various markets with 7 different subsidiaries, all of which have very different offerings in the immersive tech space. So everything from VR, AR, thrown a bit of AI, because everyone's saying that, we actually do have some of it, through to 3D visualization, pretty much everything. So we are a very interesting company in that respect. And we work with some amazing organizations. You know, I'm not going to go through all these, but you know, the Navy, Meta, of course, everyone works with them, Halliburton, Colgate, just huge. So we do lots of really interesting stuff, but I'm not here to talk to you about that today. I'm talking about this concept of what's happened to the metaverse. Is it dead? Why is there so much hype about it? Why have we got to this position? It's pretty simple, really. There's a really interesting model to look at this hype, and it can be for metaverse, it could be for AI, Human Genome Project, autonomous vehicles, whatever, right? There's a chap called Roy Amara. I don't know if you've heard of him. I came across him a couple of years ago. Really interesting. Very modest guy, actually. Didn't really want the law named after him, but people latched onto it and stuck his name on it. But this is where he basically says we overestimate the impact of technology in the short term, and we underestimate it in the long term. So I think, you know, that kind of fits with a lot of different technology cycles, really. And what it looks like is you have this great little graph, right? So you have kind of our expectations of technology. So as human beings, this is kind of what we expect. But actually what technology does is have this big sort of varying effect. So arguably what happens is you start out there, everything's kind of aligned. Actually then we expect a great deal of impact from the technology, but the technology is still evolving, right? And then we kind of get a bit bored, think it's crap, say it's dead, but meanwhile the technology actually is still developing, you know, in sort of almost behind the scenes, really. So how does that fit with the metaverse? Well, when the metaverse was first announced, thanks to Zuckerberg and Meta rebranding, is kind of really where it came onto everyone's, you know, interest. Everyone went nuts, right? Everyone went crazy. The metaverse is here. The metaverse is going to change everything. Are we in the metaverse? Everyone just went completely bonkers, right? And these are all the headlines. Everyone's just going on about it and saying, this is just incredible, it's going to change everything, you know, blah, blah, all this sort of stuff. So that was in the early days, right? Think back to that graph. That was the early point where things kind of aligned. It quickly went wrong, right? It very quickly went very wrong. Because guess what? People suddenly went, oh, so I'm not in the metaverse? Where's the metaverse then? I thought it was going to change my life. I thought I was going to be living in the metaverse. I thought everything was going to change. Oh, geez, this is a bit crap. Nothing's going on. So then you get all these, right? You know, the metaverse is completely falling apart. What can fall apart if it was never really formed? You know, that would be my argument. This is my favourite. I think this is the New York Times, the metaverse. I mean, that is journalistic gold. That is well done. I don't care if it's a negative headline about something that isn't really fair. Brilliant. You know, so you just imagine metaverse. It's, you know, it fits really well. So I love that one. Why have people stopped talking about the metaverse? Well, you're still writing headlines about it, so I don't know. And this one is really recent from the good old Observer. I love this. It's literally a week or so ago. Whenever I see these, I always screenshot and go, oh yeah, that's a good one. This one's brilliant. So, a moment's silence, please, for the death of Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse. That is a problem. I'll come on to that. Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse. You can imagine John Norton, he really enjoyed writing that. Really did. So we come back to Amara's law. Really, where we're at with the metaverse, you know, you can debate. It's somewhere in here. Is it there? Is it there? Whatever. But there's just this huge gap between what is realistic and what we expect. So that's where you end up with all those wonderfully negative, everything is dead headlines. And it's happened before, right? So, you know, back in the day, Magic Leap came up with some brilliant PR. You know, this was awesome. This got absolutely shared globally. I love it particularly because all these people, you can't quite see it in here, but you've probably seen it before. No headsets, no nothing. No one in this audience is wearing anything. So everyone's like, oh, cool. So we're going to be going to school and looking at these things, just sitting there. And everyone's really excited. Of course, they very quickly were like, so what, you don't even have a headset to show us? Because they didn't have them, right? It was amazing, PR gone crazy. And so these things have happened before. Anyone remember the year? What year do you think? Have a guess.
2014.
14?
16.
Okay, now you're cheating. That's 2016. So 7 years ago. But you know, I don't know, in my head it almost feels longer. I don't know, I'm just so sort of, it feels a real different age. And I think 7 years within the immersive tech space is actually disproportionate what happens compared to others. In fact, one person I remember saying to me said a year in the immersive technology sector is like dog years. It's like 7 years in other sectors. I was like, it's quite good, I quite like that one. So I think I'll borrow that one. So a few sort of perceptions around the metaverse that we're going to pick apart, right? So one of them is that, you know, people kind of understand what they mean by metaverse, right? People are like, oh yeah, the metaverse. But of course, is that true? So this is a survey done by Statista. And what's really interesting with this, it wasn't a huge amount of companies, but this was companies who basically said they were active in the metaverse. Okay, so this was a company, in order to qualify for this, was yeah, we're doing stuff in the metaverse. Scary stuff, right? And so, you know, you got some really interesting answers here, right? So, it's a virtual world, well done, 38%, we'll give you that, you've done pretty well there, that's a really good job. It's owned by Meta, that's a problem, that's a real problem. It's an ongoing problem and will continue to be an ongoing problem, I believe. It's linked to Web3, we'll give you that. You know, it's a little left field, but yeah, you know, that's good, but we'll take that. It's a crypto, big fail, not happy with that at all. It's a new Google, big fail, don't know how they got to that. My favourite though, think about this, 6% of respondents said it's a virtual world, it's owned by Meta, it's linked to Web3, it's a crypto, and it's a new Google. That, I want to meet those people. That's brilliant. And then the only really honest people in this whole survey were 0.5%. They're like, I don't really know. You know, so, oh, well done. But remember, these are companies who said they're active in the metaverse. So, you know, what you do. Another survey, it's not really about the actual detail here, but this is another survey by KPMG, and this went out to thousands of companies, right? And this is kind of their top expected metaverse use cases. So they went to all these companies and said, what do you think the main use cases for the metaverse will be? The reason I put this up is like, it's just so varied. Everything is put into the metaverse bucket, right? You've got IoT, you've got digital twins, you've got remote AR access, 3D social networks, all these sorts of things. So, you know, whether that's right or wrong is less for the debate. It's just such a convergence of technology, all being lumped under the metaverse label, right? So that makes it hard for people. But how do they sort of differentiate? What's their understanding of what the metaverse is? It's really complicated. So what I would say is there is no agreement on what the metaverse is, because everyone's perception of what it is different, which is not a problem, but it becomes a problem when people like grab the definition that suits them and then say something's dead. You know, that's where it's the sort of the wide variety of it is a problem. So another perception, as we talked about earlier, the metaverse is owned by Meta. What a big problem we have there. I'm in marketing, so there's a part of me that goes, Zuckerberg, rebranding to Meta was genius. There is a part of me that just kind of like begrudgingly says, well done, although I also hate it. But it was a genius move at the time. You know, whether that's now come back to bite him, you know, back in November they announced their horrendous results, which basically gave everyone the opportunity to say the metaverse is dead because they were linking it to Meta. And everyone hates Meta. Not many people really like Zuckerberg, right, unfortunately. So if they've got an opportunity to pop at them through the metaverse, they will, and that's what happens a lot of the time. So it's kind of a happy perception for people to peddle because it gives them an opportunity to give Meta a massive kick. So it isn't true, but it gets a lot of publicity, gets column inches, and it's an ongoing problem. So the next perception, the metaverse is already here. Interesting one. What does that mean? You know, as someone who's been involved in this space for so long, I started off being a real purist and going, the metaverse isn't here, that's ridiculous. You've got to have all these ridiculous things to have the metaverse fully formed. But actually you need to put a bit of real world kind of view over that. So if you think back to Travis Scott, back in Fortnite, and this is quite old, this is called the metaverse back then. It was on Fortnite, 25 million people went through the different concerts, super popular, and it was called the metaverse. Bit of a problem. Nightland, Roblox, metaverse. Once again, is it? The perception is that it is. 7 million people went through it. The fact that they were all screaming 12-year-olds, not really doing anything, just breaking stuff. Well, but still, nice headlines. So, you know, if I take my purist hat on, I go, no, the metaverse has got to be collaborative, persistent, interoperable, blah, blah, blah. It's got to have all these things, right, for the metaverse. You know, then you've got the 7 layers of the metaverse. John Radoff, really nice model, really complicated, you've got all these things. That's the metaverse. But actually, I think we need to be a bit more pragmatic in our views of what the metaverse is, right? I think we need to sort of look at the market as a whole. Because if I come back to the whole sort of, the metaverse doesn't exist, you know, this is from Intel themselves, right? We need 1,000 times more computing power than what's currently available in order to run the metaverse, the full flavour, the full fat one. But I think the reality is, no, it isn't here. But if people's perception is that it is here, I think we need to bend to it, right? I think we need to sort of say, okay, it's a flavour of, you know. So I've kind of shifted my view. When the term became popular, I was really anti it, very annoyed by people using it inappropriately, I thought. And now I'm like, you know what, get off your high horse. It's not really that important. It's how the market perceives it that is important. And so I liked Christina's presentation before. She had some of these ridiculous robot pictures. I've deliberately put this on in. It's meant to be funny, but it could be looked as just a bit cheesy crap, stock photography. But it's deliberate because that's people's perception of AI, right? Oh, the robots. Are robots going to take our jobs? No, not yet, anyway. So, but the problem is, the metaverse is perceived as being usurped by AI, which is ridiculous. As Christina was saying, there is huge benefits for them to come in, to work together, for these things to improve the metaverse as it becomes better formed. So it definitely hasn't usurped it overall. What was interesting, once again, they tie it back to Meta. They take that opportunity to talk about Meta. So they said, oh yeah, you know, Meta's finished because the metaverse doesn't work. They're now an AI company. Just ridiculous, you know. Meta's now an AI company. And even Zuckerberg, and I love this picture because it's the only one I've seen where he doesn't look like a robot. You know, he's actually showing emotion, although he's really quite upset. Which I think is also really good. So I'm quite pleased I found that. But he then came out and said, he did all right, he sort of talked about it, but then he really sort of screwed himself over by saying, we've been focusing on both AI and the metaverse for years now. You may have been focusing on AI before you talked about the metaverse. So he really tried a bit too hard when he said that. I thought you were doing really well, and then he stuffed it up by protesting. So in effect, the metaverse has usurped, AI has usurped AI from the point of view of AI has usurped the metaverse, has basically taken the spotlight off it. So yes, in a way, everyone's talking about AI. That's the big thing, right? Sure, understand it. But it's not having a negative impact on the metaverse at all. You know, arguably it's a good thing, not coming to that. So back to the metaverse is dead. And these wonderful graphics and all these brilliant articles about it. You know, you hear about, Christina mentioned it, the metaverse winter, you know, because we've got the metaverse. You know, is there a metaverse winter? Or is it a bit more of an autumn, right? So things just slow down a little bit, settle out. I actually found a positive headline. Amazing. The Business Review actually said something positive about the metaverse. How cool is that? Deborah and Josh, well done. Very impressed. So the metaverse is definitely not dead, right? It is still developing. Just as it's developing and been developing, it is still developing. So it's absolutely not dead, but it's going to go a little bit quiet. You know?
Not yet.
So it's developing, absolutely not dead. So if you think back to good old Amara's Law, where this sits, so there we were, you know, everyone overestimating it, very disappointed. What I think is going to happen, partly due to what's going to happen with AI over the coming months and years, I think what it's going to do is allow the metaverse to slip into the background a bit, right? People aren't going to still stick around saying it's broken. They're just going to kind of forget about it a bit. And it'll pop up every so often. You know, Zuckerberg's now running an AI company apparently, so they'll start popping at AI, and AI is probably going to run through the same cycle that the metaverse has run through. I'm sure there'll be disappointment coming out soon. People say, oh, it hasn't changed everything, so I think it'll be a victim of it. But it'll allow the metaverse to be kind of doing stuff in the background and continuing to develop along. But guess what? New technology cycles all run into their problems. 2000 headline in the Daily Mail. You know, the internet's kind of crap, it's gone. Well, you know, if they can pop at the internet, they're going to be popping at things like metaverse, and I'd say ultimately AI as well. So, you know, these things tend to repeat themselves, if I'm honest. So I think the way to look at it is, and this is pretty simple, so I think I borrowed this from a tech journalist, but I can't remember his name, but basically think of the metaverse as a mood board, right? It's kind of like the initial pilot, the ability to try things, the ability to do different things that will ultimately lead to a fully formed metaverse. But at the moment, it's kind of just testing stuff out. It's a bit of a mood board. It's not a final architecture, and that's, I think, the problem where a lot of people go to. And guess what? Here comes Tim. Monday, around about 10, 11 a.m. Pacific time, there's a very, very good chance they're going to announce their MR headset. Very, very good chance. I'd be amazed if they don't. I'll actually be gutted if they don't. I don't know why I'm so invested in it. I'm just like, it's going to happen. It's going to be really exciting. It's Apple, right? I mean, you know, that moves markets. So that will really refocus people, I think. Say like, wow, if Apple are doing this, hey, maybe this thing isn't just Zuckerberg's crazy dream. So we can stop talking about Zuckerberg every time we talk about metaverse, and we can start talking a bit about Tim and his merry band of people. So that is going to change things, definitely. And there you have it. Quick run through of all things metaverse hype. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thanks, all 6 of you. You guys are legends. You get like special badges or something, or you know, you get as much free coffee as you can drink.
Can I get a job?
That's sure. Not all of them.
I have a few on the live stream. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, you can say live stream as well?
Yeah, that's what the phone and the
Oh, lovely, lovely.
I got a professional setup.
That could be like 8 people then.
Does anyone have any questions for James before we pass it over? Let me take this.
Hi James, thank you for that talk. I think with a lot of what you said I agree.
generally speaking, I'm quite an optimist with all of this, and I've got some development experience within VR since like 2018, 2019. When Zuckerberg changed the name of his company, it sort of gutted the whole industry who was actually building it in the background.
Yeah.
It felt like a very selfish move. And obviously it's twisted the perception of what people think the metaverse is. I wonder what your definition of that is, because I know you think we're not quite there yet, but some of the building blocks are there. I define the metaverse myself less than one particular architecture or world, but rather the thing that links those different worlds together. And I think it does exist, but perhaps there's too many versions of that protocol that just haven't been adopted yet. And I think the actual adoption of that and, in a sense, regulation or consensus with those protocols is what will then manifest that into the mainstream. But I wonder what your definition of the metaverse is.
I think it's a really good question, but I think it's kind of evolving, and I think it's really hard to put a really firm definition on it. I think all the things you talk about, like, you know, protocols, you know, interoperability, those things coming together, what will it be? And I think it's going to be, some of it is to be confirmed. I would kind of say, to me, it is this sort of virtual layer across the world that enables us to interact and do things in different ways, which could be VR, it could be AR. It's not just VR, we're getting a bit hooked up on that. So I really believe that to put a label on it now is almost impossible. What it'll be, what it'll end up, you know, the reality is, will there be protocols that go across different sort of interoperability platforms or what have you, or is it going to be walled gardens that operate in their own ways and they're in different ways, and therefore, you know, interoperability doesn't happen? So I think in a perfect world, you're going to have this wonderful kind of interoperable, open, metaverse, virtual layer interaction piece. I'm not sure if that will happen, not in the next sort of 10 years or so, maybe as things evolve. So I almost am not that hung up on what the definition is, because, like I said, I've changed my perspective a bit and said, you know what, if someone sees Roblox as metaverse, okay, let's work with that, because ultimately it will become part of the metaverse. It's kind of a walled garden at the moment, it's generally desktop, but actually, perhaps it'll become more open, it'll definitely become virtual in some way as the headsets evolve. So it's a tricky one, and I think anyone that kind of is able to stand up and come up with a really pithy definition, I think they're being a little narrow. But I understand you have to do it, you know, but I think it's really hard.
One other question, just looking at the distinction between sort of what currently stands today as centralized versus decentralized futures for metaverse, where do you sit on that conversation? Does there need to be a decentralized, at least a financial infrastructure and digital asset ownership that exists within a metaverse environment?
I think there does need to be. I think whether there will be is another question. I think the reality is, you know, if you think of sort of centralized, decentralized, you know, walled gardens, open, what have you, the reality is it's going to reflect a lot of what's going on in the world currently. So it's not going to suddenly change. But I think you have to have some decentralized aspects to it. You should. Whether it will, I mean, you know, the use of blockchain, the use of all those sorts of pieces is going to enable that. And there will be elements of it. How mainstream it will be,
yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm really pragmatic about it, and I think in the sort of near term, and I say that anywhere up to 10 years, it's not going to be particularly. But I think over time, there is the opportunity to really open things up more, and I think it should. But I think in the short term, it'll be that kind of land grab. There won't be a lot of open interoperability, realistically. It sounds a bit negative.
Yeah, no, appreciate that.
It's unfortunately pragmatic.
Yeah, and you'll come from the marketing perspective, so I don't know if this will be something you can answer, but when we look at a future for the metaverse, when we're separating hype from reality, the hype is this concept of like a Snow Crash or a Ready Player One, where everyone's in this scaled environment where everyone can play together. But currently everything's still sharded. Even if you're in, like, you know, gaming environments, you have to, after a certain number of players, a new iteration, a new version sets up, right? How far do you think we are from that reality at this stage?
I mean, like you say, this is starting to nudge me into slightly technical area.
So,
where
yeah.
I start sort of, saying stuff, but it doesn't necessarily make sense because I'm in marketing, so I'm never be short of words. But if you go back to one of my slides, which was talking about Intel's comment, which is we in effect need 1,000 times increase in computing power to realise the current metaverse. So there is definitely a gap at the moment, which is why you've got these instances that fill up quickly and you can't expand them. So I think that is a problem at the moment, and it's affecting the sort of user experience as well to a degree. It's affecting what companies can offer.
Yeah.
It's just a question of how quickly they pour research and investment into it. But
Do you think
it's definitely a challenge.
Do you think it would then help brands that you're, say, working with, like big enterprises, to be more invested into developing in metaverse environments when they know they can actually hit everyone with one campaign?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends what you're talking about, whether you're talking about sort of internal uses of it or if you're talking about using it for marketing as a whole. So it's of course much more appealing if people are able to do that. I just think the reality is we're quite a way off it, and there's other things to focus on as well before we start worrying too much about capacity.
Hi, Emma. Just another quick question, perhaps controversial. So I think on the marketing side, the real power of some of this is in like activations and creating experiences that brands can use to connect with new people. My fear when we have this grand unified metaverse is that the world of old advertising and billboards and all of that will be more in your face than it ever has been, and from the user's perspective, this overwhelming compounding effect of more and more brands trying to hit you, not only will it be less effective for the businesses, but I just think it's ethically and morally like a real grey area. So what's the perspective on that advertising?
Yeah, I agree. I think what I would probably say to that is it will be more of a choice-based piece, right? So if someone wants to be hit with loads of ads, they're probably getting some free access to stuff. So I think what there'll be more is a bit like back in the day using Spotify with ads or whatever. I think it will be more that sort of model. So yeah, it's an opportunity, and brands will go nuts, right? We can target, we can use AI, we know exactly what someone's looking at, what they've looked at. Let's hit them with 1 million different messages, virtual billboards, and blah. And I think it will become quite overpowering. So I think what will be is different models. So actually, I'm going to pay for the X where I don't get. So it's almost like, well, if you want something, maybe I'm simplifying, but if you want something free, you're going to get hit with loads of stuff. If you want to pay our X level, you're only going to get one ad every blah. Or if you want the non-ad one, it's this much. So I think there is definitely opportunity to misuse it massively. And I think in the initial stages as things develop, it will be. And then I think there'll be a backlash. And they'll start bringing it down. But I think initially they're going to be, oh wow, I can put 1 million billboards up within this environment for $1. Let's do that. And then everyone will get bored, they'll feedback, people won't use that environment, and it will change. So, it will get abused. I think it will sort itself out in time. A bit like pop-up ads and stuff back in the day online. People just wouldn't accept them anymore. So I think it will go.
I don't know who said this, but there's a saying that if something's free, you're the product.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
If you've got people paying for the infrastructure to allow this to happen, to the equivalent methods, I guess through marketing.
I can't understand.
Amazing, James.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Put your hands together for James. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the presentation. So we're trying to turn that off. And I'd like to welcome to the stage our next speaker. It's quite an interesting exploration about the use of generative AI in order to crowdsource science. And I'm really intrigued to hear how this takes form. Is that really good well to you, Deborah?
Yes.
Awesome. Before we get started, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to come up anyway, but I'm going to go and, I don't need to say this into the mic. I'm going to go and do an announcement because we can get more people in to listen.
Okay.
Let's just make sure we're set up. You don't have necessarily no sugar. No worries. Just checking that everything's in order. So here's your current slide, there's your next slide. Current slide is also down there.
Oh, okay.
Let's make sure this is on. Perfect.
Yeah, as long as I can read it, I can stand anywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's better than your head because we've got lights shining on this one.
Oh, okay, good.
And you press down to go to your next slide.
Okay. Thank
Give
you.
me 2 minutes and then I'll come and probably reintroduce you to everyone.
All right, thank you.
I just want to make sure we get some good audience.
Are you starting to?
Yeah.
Now or?
No, he's getting more people to
Oh.
come in, but yeah, now it's in.
Yeah, I've
5
been
minutes.
checking back to see if it was time because it wasn't exactly 3:15 starting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to keep our audience on the live stream waiting. So let's get started, and we'll get the more people are going to be coming through. So without any further ado, I want to introduce Deborah Wong. Am I saying that right, Deborah?
Yes.
From Rejuve AI, who's going to be talking more about generative AI and some of its interesting applications in crowdsourcing science. So I'll hand the reins to you, and you can give a much more comprehensive overview. Put your hands together. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, so today I'm going to talk to you about generative AI on the blockchain. Crowdsourced science. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm turning you off.
I'm the CTO of Rejuve.ai. And what is our goal? It's to get generative neural networks to make deep reels rather than deep fakes. So, as most people know, ChatGPT-4, Palm 2, and DALL-E are examples of generative neural networks, and they have amazing human-like abilities. But the reason they are successful is not that humans designed their properties. On the contrary, all humans did was just follow nature. They simulated neurons, which are in nature well, and their properties are emergent. All they did was train these neurons to predict a word in a sequence, and nature took care of the rest. So our approach to making generative neural networks realistic is to follow nature even more. We introduce principles of social science into the ensembles of generative neural networks to make them more distributed than other ensemble techniques like Agent GPT or Auto GPT, so that they point more towards truth. And we call our model the generative cooperative network. Okay, so I talked about pointing towards truth, but what is truth? What is lie, and how do those relate to neural hallucinations? Well, for our purposes, truth is a mechanistic model that checks against reality and thus explains reality. It makes sense of the world, simplifying a complicated reality, and generalizing that knowledge so that the world is predictable and thus manipulable. Okay? And so a lie is kind of similar. It's also a model. It checks in reality in some places, but not others. And because of its ability to deceive, it makes one class of persons manipulable and predictable to another class of persons. So both of these exist in ChatGPT because both are incentivized in the culture that ChatGPT is trained on. Both truth and lies persist because they are useful to one person or another, right? Okay, given all this, what is hallucination? Well, hallucination is a model that does not check against reality and does not exist, but could, possibly. And it's not yet incentivized one or another. So how do we get rid of them? Our approach to any hallucination, and in the process, obtaining both truth and justice, is blockchain with reinforcement learning to change the incentives of the AI agents. Okay, so how can the social bring about truth? Well, before truth was formalized in math and science, it evolved in culture naturally. Humans formed language through common usefulness of association, grounded in a common external reality that then pinched upon their consensus meaning. Language brings up similar sets of associations in separate minds, and interpretive social science and hermeneutics are the basics of the Steele's and Brooks' theory of autonomous agents, and that is the foundation of all robotics. So this includes autonomy of perception, or that agents perceive as is beneficial for them to perceive. So in GCN, autonomy of perception closes the loop on how autonomous agents come to attribute meaning to signs. Through the coevolution of induction, where all stakeholders find meanings in signs that are useful to them. So signs start out not having meaning, and while generative AI interact, they come to have meaning, as is useful to all the generative AI. So signs come to represent agent roles and what agents should perform in roles in an emergent distribution of labor that is distributed, and it's more distributed than the human design role assignments in current generative network ensembles. So the GCN works at the level of incentives, giving generative agents incentives to solve problems in a variety of ways until they work out amongst themselves the best models that solve problems. Models that are crowdsourced from the community of science. And so individual models are put together in system biology wholes to find holistic truths of science. Okay, so how do we tease out lies in science? By removing power incentives and continually testing incentives, GCN lets truth bubble up naturally, crowdsourcing the community of science. GCN is holistic, but composed of reductionistic proven facts, and those facts are put together by the GCN. So what kind of reductionistic facts? Well, we have randomized control trials. These in science are just ways of carefully checking against reality, avoiding known possible deceptive appearances like confounding, but only applicable to single or very few relationships, while the world has many more. Like you can probably have randomized controlled trials of one thing against another, but not many different combinations of things, because there's just too many possible combinations. Human society does check against reality and retain what is learned, but in informal mode does not check single relations as well as randomized controlled trials. However, the neural nets of the members of society can be more holistic than randomized controlled trials. And in checking those groups of relations, in their holistic and meaningful cultural models that use a kind of a constraint satisfaction to make predictions under diverse contexts. And so that's the power you see in neural networks, the ability to do a constrained set of action against many, many different contexts together, more than we can reductionistly tease out. Our aim is to find out how to use the power of the neural net to put together the reductive facts of science into a whole in systems biology, in a model, but without the power relations that have incentivized deception in our culture. Okay, so Rejuve AI aims to decentralize science. So first of all, we look at the power relations within science. And what is labor in science? Well, the labor in a data economy includes the data from one's body, like personal and healthcare data, and the data from one's mind, the intellectual property. And at Rejuve AI, AI performs the recombination of data instead of capitalists, so there's no arbitrage of data. We have liquid employment, regrouping, and reuse of people's models, and of scientists' models, and each network member contributes a small part that they themselves define, which then gets combined into a greater whole by the AI. And that AI recombines those small parts based on blindness. Blind audition, blind justice, blind randomized controlled trials. They're blind because that approach makes for a fair selection based on merit and not on bias. Okay, so how do we accomplish this blind recombination of scientist models? Okay, the generative cooperative network. As we said before, it's more decentralized and emergent than other generative ensembles. It recombines contributed data and generative models in the mixtures of experts that together solve problems related to healthcare. Generative models talk to each other, but in their own emergent language to perform multiple goals related to modeling the human body. From the individual contributions and under many challenges, mechanistic systems biology models emerge. Okay, so how did they emerge? Well, we use reinforcement learning, but we use a kind that includes both cooperation and competition. These agents interact with each other in a market and are awarded tokens. It's a simulated market, so they have many more instances to interact with each other than humans have. And they create a dynamic, multi-resolutional mechanistic simulation while they interact with each other. So in this market, they, as individual models, they are able to employ each other, and by employ, that means you delegate part of your model to someone else who's done a better job than you, maybe, but you pay them. They also form teams by employment to compete with other teams. And this is all automated. And so there's both cooperation, that means you can be on the same team as another agent, and competition. You're competing with other agent teams for a reward, and that reward is tokens for completing a challenge in science. Now, why would this eke out truth? Because there are many, many different challenges. And the models that together can solve the most challenges get the most tokens. So we're incentivizing solving different challenges. Agents earn simulated tokens that are related to the system they are simulating. So as they solve more challenges related to healthcare, the ones that are the best at solving those challenges are the ones that get the right explanations for the body, so that explanation will be used in one challenge, another challenge, another challenge. So they're the best models and explain the best and thus simulate the best. And so as these different simulations, as the model is more able and the agents are more able to pick from the scientist models to make the best simulation, they pick the truer models because they're more general, the more true they are. And we said that agents employ each other. Well, there comes to be an emergent market price for models, and that price is a contribution of that model to the solution. So it becomes an emergent assignment of credit, the price a model comes to have. And an assignment of credit is important. It's rewarding the scientist for their labor in making a solution. And that solution could be a product. And so the scientists who have contributed to the product are able to have a proportionate compensation for their contribution, according to how important they were to the solutions. Okay, so we talked about signs, and we talked about emergent languages that AIs talk to each other with. We have these AIs talk to each other. You know, if they're large language models, it can include English, but it also can include their own emergent concepts. And so why do they need emergent concepts? They need emergent concepts to find new roles that each other belongs in within a systems biology model of the human body, because we haven't discovered every piece of everything in the human body yet. And as they discover new groupings of agents, they need to have new languages that bring to mind what kind of groupings exist and the mechanisms behind these groupings. And what do I mean by emergent signs? Well, they start out arbitrary and come to have meanings as simulation goes along. And also, they exist because agents induce them according to their usefulness. So their usefulness here is gaining tokens. And they induce the meaning of the sign and choose each other on the basis of the sign they display and read. They make signs and choose each other on the basis of those signs. And those signs come to mean the roles each agent has in relationship to each other. So that sign becomes to be a requirement list and what one agent wants another to perform for them. And this kind of signaling leads to self-organization, open-endedness, and emergence, so that the lower level agent wanting to, gain more tokens and solve particular problems, from that emerges an upper level sign system that that indicates what role all the agents have. And so that's what I mean by it's more emergent than designed hierarchies of generative agents that people have made in Agent GPT or Auto GPT. It's not human design, but the agents themselves decide what generative AIs will have what roles, and it's all based on signing and language. And that language itself is emergent, and so those roles are emergent. And as the roles are emergent, they're more distributed because all the agents together make that sign come to have meaning, because there's lots of challenges, there's lots of choices to choose agents, and in this reinforcement learning setup, the different agents, but displaying and reading signs over time, those signs come to indicate role meanings over time. So there's an open-ended self-organization. And those signs are open-ended in that they mean different things to different agents, because they come to have meaning according to what is useful for them to perceive. And so it could be different for different agents what is useful for a sign to mean, right? And since that sign can mean different things, different agents, it's slippable, it's fuzzy, it's ambiguous. And it allows for agents to improve upon the meaning of the sign. So it means, an even better function, an even better product as time goes along. And new signs can be created to indicate new types of roles emerging in the system. Agents can act on other agents based on those roles, those signs, but not as individuals. Like, instead of an agent picking Joe, he picked someone displaying a sign that Joe might have displayed before, so that another agent can come in on a relationship and do even a better job than Joe. Right? Signs create, together these signs create a functional space or culture, and in that space are accumulated past innovations or past ways of relating to each other in the model. And so it becomes the culture of the agents, the accumulated, associations that tell them how to organize themselves or what has succeeded in the past in getting tokens. So it's a kind of a history, those signs. Just like ChatGPT uses language as a kind of a history, but it also uses it for new, recombines that history for new things. Those signs, and then those signs are implicit signs because they're like strings of zeros and ones that come to have meaning, but they can be interpreted with explicit AI into explicit lists of requirements. So what we have here is a software emulation of the social emergence of symbols from sub-symbols via symbolic interaction, choosing each other based on the symbol. It is inspired by Smolensky's concept of the emergence of symbols from sub-symbols in neural networks. So it's similar to neural networks, but it's the interface between neural networks that keeps the history of the agent culture. So what is the role of signs? Well, the emergent signs indicate a group consensus because over time they developed over many interactions, over many different ways that the user has perceived is beneficial for him to interpret the sign. And those group consensus are what fits together and what models fits together in this emergent simulation. So there is a possibility for specialization. Like agents might specialize in various areas. Like they might have a very developed sign that has them specialize in a particular area. In this case, a focus area like cardiology or something like that, and become very good at it. And so they have a particular sign for that particular role they have. And concepts emerge from the sub-symbols in this social process. So the meaning of symbols increment towards the many stakeholders' utility over time and become a sort of a Nash equilibria that is specified by the emergency coordination via signaling, and that is required for the multi-resolution simulation to mechanistically form and transcend levels. So we have the lower level seeking tokens and the upper level of the emergent sign system that tells you how to make a multi-resolution simulation of the human body. Okay, so we said the upper level system, the language system they've developed, holds their history. But there's new agents coming into the simulation. And those new agents see the history, and they can follow a path in vector space to optimize their income by taking on the roles that those signs indicate. But they can also, if they have neuroplasticity, or they're not yet diverse, they can change those roles and improve them and improve the science. So there's a kind of a mix of exploration and exploitation. They have the past there, but they can also explore and find ways to change the past and make a better system. Okay, so that's where you get the open-ended emergence. Through innovation, new agents provide ongoing diversity and open-ended evolution, while those who find the balance between exploitation and exploration will innovate and gain the most tokens, right? If you're too concerned, you're just going to follow the past, you're not going to be as good as an innovator. And if you innovate too much, well, you might not secure a place in the society as a known entity. So this encourages agents to each reach the edge of chaos of optimal problem solving. Okay, so that's how it works. But this is all fueled by tokenomics. Scientists contribute their models to the GCN. A GCN uses reinforcement learning and multiple agents who do many trials and many different challenges and find the scientists' models that fit together the best, right? And so the GCN's challenge is to rearrange the model and even make new models that are combination models that get the best solutions to health and longevity problems. And those tend to be the truest solutions. So scientists are actually contributing, and the point is that the GCN finds out which models are the best and then rewards the scientists. And so we have a tokenomics that can handle this. Our tokenomics has a utility token called the Rejuve, where we have a network of members who contribute data. We have modelers, we have product creators, and they have transactions with each other in Rejuve. And that's an already existing release utility token. Well, we have a couple more coming, and those include the data NFT, where a scientist or a health data contributor's contributions are kept track of, and the proportionate amount of their contribution is kept track of in their data and what permissions they have given to different products for their data to be used. And the product NFT, there's one for each product, and that product NFT points back to the data NFT, which is one for each network member, and tells and finds out what proportion each one of them contributed to an end product. So that with every sale of the product, all of the people who've contributed are proportionately compensated. We are going to have health challenge staking pools that are like the reinforcement learning of the individual challenges in which different problems are presented, and those who have the best model that solves a different health challenge will win the staking challenge, and they will have coupons so that their data, that their product NFTs can be purchased by other people, up to half of which they can sell off and get money now instead of waiting until a product is released later. So this is all supported with a tokenomic system for scientific justice. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Really detailed, love the understanding, and appreciate your project. Do we have any questions on this from the audience? Perhaps a little technical? Yeah. No, it's super detailed though. Like, can you give us what's next in your roadmap now in terms of like the launch of this and getting it into the hands of scientists?
Well, the very next thing we're going to launch is our Rejuve Longevity app. And this is how people can contribute the data from their healthcare data. They'll be able to contribute surveys, and soon they'll be able to contribute genetic data, and they'll get a data NFT that will keep track of what data they're contributing and make sure that they are compensated.
Yeah, I love the idea of innovating on the way that our healthcare is managed currently. Like the waiting times when you go to the GP and they ask you the same questions that the telephone triage doctor asked you, and wasting more of NHS time, or NHS in the UK, but you know, it changes later. But yeah, really love that. Really appreciate your presentation, Deborah. If anyone does have any questions, please reach out to Deborah in the break, and we can further the conversation. And thanks for anyone who's joining on the live stream. Thanks for listening in. And yeah, big round of applause for Deborah. Thanks everyone. Just next up, whilst give us a couple of minutes to set up the stage, we're going to be having a panel. Our resident UX experts leaving the room as well. we have a panel all about building user-centric products and apps for the Web3 era. But we will be getting that set up. Give us 5 minutes, and then we'll get started. See you later.
Oh, yeah.
So there was recording then?
Yes. Yeah, that's okay, recording, right?
Yeah, just
Thank you.
Got to squeeze us all on the stage. It's going to be
Could I have our moderator here first, if that's right? Chisum?
Yes, please.
Lovely. Just making sure I'm saying it right. Let's check this right here.
I came up and was like, I could have just. No, I actually can.
And then you just hold it.
Did get to that stage. It was close. It was close.
Soften it.
Cozy.
And you've got
Yeah, so tomorrow.
plus.
Oh, you do, so you can't go too crazy.
Jason.
Well, it's okay. That should be fine.
Jason here.
How much?
Oh, just.
No, I'm not, sorry.
No problem.
No, it's just, I'm
really
sorry.
Yeah, I saw you
Delaying a
posting
little
about
bit.
it.
I think we're gonna delay it till 4:15.
Oh, okay.
Till 4:15, and then they're gonna try to push people in here because,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people may not want us.
No, I'm gonna stop calling people in a minute.
1, 2. Okay, I'm going to invite our panelists up to the stage. I'll allow our moderator to introduce them in more detail. And the moderator for this session is Chisum, who's co-founder and CEO of Check DC. So Chisum, please come up, take the stage. But then you have the intros. After it's the break. I'll get an announcement on the other stage as well. So maybe we can get everyone up and do a nice long round of introductions as well. Maybe we can have a general discussion, you know, about some interesting subject matter. You choose.
Let everybody else get up here.
All right.
Like some sort of prima donna. Well, how about this, rather than us, what, let's talk to the audience, let's put our devices down.
I'll stay up here.
Oh, you're recording, that's right. And what are y'all interested in with Web3? What does Web3 mean to you? What interesting thing have you seen here, and you know why are you here? So why are you here?
I'm here as medical content writer for Rejuve. I'm an A&E doctor. That's my day job. I see AI on the blockchain as a technology that could be used to kind of unlock some secrets in terms of human health and extended longevity. So to me, it seems like this is a real use case. NFT is not a picture anymore. It's actually going to do things that can change the world for the better. So that's my reason for being here.
Yeah, so you have a practical application for it.
Yes.
Yeah, and so what do you generally write about? Technology?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a bit of a unique creature in that I've got industry experience in emergency medicine, and I've also been involved with the Singularity Net project as a holder for about 4 years now. No, well, no, I think Singularity Net is based over
It's a
in the
Dutch company,
Netherlands.
I'm thinking of the Singularity University, is that the same?
It's part of it, I think.
Well, no, I mean, Ben's probably affiliated, but Singularity, that's a decentralized AI platform.
Oh, it's called oh, I know what Singularity, I know what the Singularity is. There's the Singularity University.
Okay.
And there was the Singularity, what did you say?
Singularity Net.
Okay.
And then, there's also Singularity Foundation, which is more the commercial arm. The Singularity Net is based in the crypto world, and there's a number of spin-offs. Rejuve is kind of following the healthcare market, and so that's the one I was interested in. And I recently started working from them. Jasmine's LC.
So Jasmine, why are you here?
Yeah, so CEO of Rejuve.ai, which our CTO Deborah just presented about the AI side. And so we're building a decentralized longevity application for users to be able to contribute their health data, receive personalized insights and recommendations, and earn tokens.
Oh, okay.
And
so the customization around individuals, what effort does it take to not just give a one-size-fits-all solution? How do you make it about me, not about people who are like me or everybody in general? How do you make it about me? I always want it to be about me.
We did notice.
Yeah, well, I'm a user advocate.
Yeah, well, it actually starts with our mobile app that's in beta now. You can actually try it out. We have it reopened again until the 3rd. So you put in your own data, and AI analysis kind of crunches that. So in our first stage, it is more of a generalistic sort of output where it is based on the standards of known medical science and whatnot. But as we add on the more advanced AI layers and also being able to contribute more types of data like genetics and epigenetic data, that's when it gets to be more precision focused.
That's really cool. I need to learn more about that afterwards. I will be upfront. I did apply to teach at the Singularity University once they get turned down. So, but I don't hold grudges. I don't hold grudges. So let's do somebody in the back. I see you, sir. Why are you here? Yeah, you.
I'm here to support you guys.
Okay, well, that's all I
Come in there and listen to you guys. That's what we're doing. We listen to you guys. Yeah.
Just as a note, they are running like about 15 minutes behind on the other stage too.
Okay.
They're going to announce this stage and send people here, and after this there's nothing on in this room. Right. So we can go on through the break, people can filter in during the break, and we could get started.
Don't tell Jason that.
Yeah. But we'll be waiting a long time, is my point, if we are waiting.
They're worried because I'm a bit of a wallflower.
Yeah. But I think we could get started with a few introductions. And there's plenty of breadth to the topic of user experience and design and the issues, so that I'll keep you guys. I specialize in user experience, so I'll keep you guys going as long as we need to go on with questions.
Because otherwise people might get us confused. Otherwise people might get us confused.
Are you going to be sitting in perfect order? There we go.
I thought I was in
There was something bugging me about that.
Would you, on the right, I know you're giving space, but you're not on the screen now. No, you're not. It's more that you're not on our little live stream.
Oh, I see. Right.
So we want to make sure that you're visible. Yeah, you're looking good now. Amazing. Chisholm, over to you to introduce yourself on our panel. And yeah, excited to learn more about what brings you all here into this conversation.
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. Hi everyone. I'm Chisholm, and I run a design company called CheckDC. We do all things from brand to product design for companies and teams of different sizes and different industries. And one of the very pressing topics that have come up with clients is, what's the future of web? What's the future with AI and blockchain? And I'm glad to be moderating this session to talk us through building user-centric products for the Web3 era with these amazing lady and gentlemen. So yeah, one by one, everyone can introduce themselves. So starting with you.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elena Debayo. I'm the CEO and founder of a group of companies called Neo Group. And one part of the company is all about upskilling Black women to get into tech. We work through kind of technologies being part of that. So we've upskilled Black women in VR and AR, and also in the blockchain space. We've also got a hair and beauty company, a beauty tech company that's building the first augmented reality powered salons across the world, starting from Birmingham. So yeah, that's me, and I'm excited for this panel.
Hey, I'm Arno Meunier. It's tough to pronounce. Arno is fine in English. And I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Dispatch. We're a distributed commerce company. What we basically do is we meet customers where they are. We built a product that allows you to buy anything really. It could be a physical item, a digital item, straight from an ad, but also in metaverses and so on. I'm happy to be here.
Sorry. My name is Jason Cranford Teague. I am a user experience digital strategist. Right now I'm specializing in giving strategy to educational and academic institutions and products. And my goal really is to help people change the nature of how we educate. We have all this new technology, and yet we still seem to be using the same methods of teaching, just in a digital world instead of in a physical world. And there's so many more possibilities, so I'm hoping to help organizations with that.
Thanks. Hi everyone. My name is Andrew Graff. I work. Got my phone. Rest in peace. My name is Andrew Graff. I work for the ISA Foundation. I've been working in digital products for about 15 years now, and specifically within Web3 or decentralized technologies for about 5. And essentially I've built a capability within the ISA Foundation to tackle any kind of use case or problem using set processes to understand the problem space and delivering the solution space. So what we do is essentially deliver innovative products that solve real challenges. So I'm looking forward to discussing dApps, product design, and everything else in between with this amazing panel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you to everyone who has joined us. And we'll be diving right in. But firstly, we have a few icebreaker questions for the speakers, and just for you to get to know them a lot better. So, guys, first question is, what would the title of your autobiography be? So we'll go like this, so starting with Andrew.
Help me? I wasn't expecting that one. What would it be? Well, just gratitude. Gratitude, and just for not to go too deep into that, but ultimately that's what it is. All the things we're experiencing, living in Western countries with the privileges that we have in good health, hasn't always been the case for me, but not always for everyone. Grateful for where we are now, the fact that we can discuss these technologies and discuss how we can take them forward for the greater good, and for the benefit of people. So I'm grateful for all these things.
Yeah, this is the type of thing, you know, that you stay up late at night thinking about, and you come up with the perfect title, and then of course somebody asks you, and you're like, I have no idea. Autobiography. Oh, actually I do. It's to be rather than to see. That actually is the name of a talk I gave recently, and the motto for my state back in the United States is the Latin esse quam videre, which means to be rather than to seem, and that's kind of become my life philosophy. I don't want to seem to be something I'm not. I want to be the thing I want to be. So.
All right. I think mine will be LFG. I think that stands for I think my mantra for the past 15 years, our team's mantra, and I think as entrepreneur, you gotta hustle, you gotta try, you gotta keep trying it and again and again. I'm just gonna do that one. LFG.
I love that. Mine will be, I think, therefore I am. I think that a lot of what I've had to learn is that I'm as far as my mindset will take me to go to. So, however I think big, you know, is where I'm going to go. So, yeah.
Great, awesome. And so, next question I'll be asking individually, starting with you. What 3 apps can't you do without? If you were to delete every app on your phone and leave just 3, what would those 3 apps be?
My Monzo app, because I need to live and have money. My second app that I can't do without is Slack.
Yeah.
That's where I communicate with everyone. And then my third app is my calendar.
Okay. So, Arnold, I have a question for you. And yeah, a different question.
I'm going to talk about the apps.
Okay, if you could live anywhere in the world for a year, where would it be? Let's say Paris. Let's say anywhere in France. Outside of France.
Can I say New York? I love that city, but I guess I'm cheating. I don't know. Wow, it's not. Probably South America. I've never been there for some odd reason, and I really want to see it. What is it?
Okay, so Jason, if you could eliminate one thing from your daily routine, what would it be and why?
God, what are you, a self-help practice? Am I going to do one thing? See, I enjoy taking a shower every morning. It's because I stretch. Admit any one thing. So a couple of years ago, I inherited a dog from my in-laws who passed away. And I am not a dog person. I do not like dogs. Never. I'm a cat person. I have 2 cats. But I have to walk the dog. And if I can admit anything from my day, it would be walking that dog. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dad.
Tuesday afternoon be like?
Oh, well, let's get involved at the beach somewhere, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we'd all like to say, hey, I'd get bored. I'd actually get bored. I would get bored. I'd enjoy a beach for a bit. I'd probably drink too much. And then I'd go, I need to do something with my life and go back to what I was doing before. That's pretty much it. But no, I mean, I'd like to think that basically it would give you a springboard, right? You get to that point and then you can pick and choose what you want to do. You know, if you want to pass up on things, you can pass up on them. If you want to go all in on something, go all in. If you want to help other people and then, you know, basically pass down your experiences and your knowledge, support them. Absolutely. If you want to get into charity and philanthropy, do that. That's kind of what I do. I think, you know, keep yourself busy and do good things. Hopefully. Or bad things. Who knows?
One person's got thing is another person's fault.
Exactly. Okay, thanks guys. And I think it's time to go into the questions. So there are about 5 of them, and I'll be asking I'll be asking a member of the panel to speak first on each question, and everyone else then weighs in, you know, after that. So the first question is, you know, what is Web3 and why Web 3 and how did we even get here? And so I'll be asking the web pioneer himself, Jason. Over to you.
Yeah, so in the beginning, Tim Berners-Lee created the Wide Web. He created the World Wide Web. But really, you know, the best you could say, it was 1988, and it was in its, we would call it alpha phase, right? It was only in CERN. He used it to share papers with other scientists. It really wasn't until around 1992 when Mark Andreessen and friends, I want to make that clear, it wasn't just Mark Andreessen, he had a lot of people helping him, released the Mosaic web browser. How many people here use the Mosaic web browser?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, y'all are all old. I did too. It was in fact, when Netscape came out, I was like, I am not switching to from Mosaic, that's my browser. So 1992, and we saw the beta phase of the World Wide Web, when it started to go out into across academic institutions, colleges, and that's where I discovered it when I was getting my Master's of Science at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And around 1994 is when I say Web 1 started, Web 1.0, because that's when Netscape came out, and that same year HTML became standardized, so we could all count on the same tags. And that was the beginning of Web 1.0. Now, Web 2.0, jump ahead around 8 or 9 years to the early 2000s, and what caused Web 2.0, really the technology had been there for a while, but Internet Explorer won the browser wars, for better or worse, so we had a consistent browser to work with. But also, interestingly, I've come to realize that I think the dot-com bust, who remembers the dot-com bust? Okay, you're a bit younger then. The dot-com bust actually cleared out a lot of the dead weight in the web, because already by 2000, there was a lot of tech debt in what we were doing, technical debt, where people were trying to shoehorn in old technologies, but this all kind of got wiped out with the dot-com bust, and that allowed innovators like YouTube to come along. Now, before YouTube, there were plenty of people who tried to do video on the web, but none of them could make it work. A lot of the reason was because of the technology. Now, I know the name of this conference is Web3, and we think, okay, Web3 is a new thing. I actually, going back through the history, I realized Web3 actually, in my opinion, maybe we should call it Web 2.5, really started in 2009 with the rise of mobile devices, the final standardization of CSS and JavaScript and HTML, and the growth of social media. That really completely changed the way we design. We had to start to design responsive designs for our mobile devices. And really, in a way, that was a new web. That was a new epoch in the web, especially in web design. So now, whether you call it Web 3 or Web 4, we're definitely, you can feel we're at the tipping point of a new epoch with Web 3. Now, giving you a quick crash course in the web, I am a skeptic. I still remain a skeptic. That doesn't mean I think, oh, throw blockchain out, it's awful. But there is enough issues with blockchain that I don't know that it is the solution. Now, I agree completely that we want a decentralized World Wide Web. We want that. That's actually how the web got started. And really, that's what the web should be. We should all be in control of our own data. We should know what's being said about us. We should be able to correct mistakes without having to issue a warrant through the government. But I don't know that blockchain is that solution yet. And I'm hoping to be either convinced or find more reasons why I think let's figure out a different solution, such as getting back to Tim Berners-Lee, who has his own proposed solution that's not blockchain, it's called solid pods. And it is a way for people to control and own their own data in the public sphere, but not based on a blockchain type of thing. So I'm interested in exploring that more as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jason. Does anyone else want to weigh in?
Whoa. Yeah, I'll go for it, yeah. I mean, maybe a few people have seen a really simple way of describing it, which I love. So I think great points there. I love the way that you described social media being a new epoch. The way that I like to think about Web3 in terms of Web 1, Web 2, Web 3 is this description of Web 1 being about reading. You know, basically, you're just reading content on probably a very crummy looking, low resolution screen, but that was the original internet. And Web 2 is read and write, where you could then start interacting a little bit more. You know, it's a two-way thing. It wasn't just you reading information, it was also about you interacting with web pages. Makes perfect sense. Web 3 is about read, write, and own. And then it's about owning the data yourself. And again, that simplistic sort of way of looking at it makes perfect sense when you think around lots of things that we do, whether it be with NFTs, whether it be with data, whether it be with identity, all of those areas. So I would say if you're trying to describe it to someone who's coming into the space and you need to describe it in an elevator, that might be a nice way to think about it.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
I actually would like to add to this. I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine who thought that Web3 and AI and other new technologies outside of the blockchain technologies was not in Web3, and my argument would be anything that actually enables consumers or users to own their data, to own something on the web, actually can contribute to that. So I wouldn't say blockchain technology necessarily would kind of sit just in the Web3 space. I think even AI can actually allow you to own your data. That is Web3 because it's just a new advancement of the internet, a new advancement of the web. And so when we're talking about this space, we actually need to be talking about the space of the evolution of the web rather than this space as in the blockchain space, as in the metaverse space. Because it's interesting when I call myself a Web3 advocate to people, they think, oh my gosh, you must be into the crypto stuff. But like, actually, yes, that's part of it, but you know, there's a lot more to it than just crypto, a lot more to it than just blockchain. It's actually, how does the internet and the web evolve beyond where it is today?
I actually echo that. Like, I don't think there is a switch that we're going to turn. Boom, we're all on Web3. That's not the way shit happens. And I'm a strong believer in Web3 and everything you guys touched on. Actually, like people owning their data. That's why I started my company. I just think it's not going to be through a brand new interface people are not used to. Like you have to, and I think we're touching on that later. But yeah, my point is it's an evolution. It's a slow evolution, and it's not like boom, suddenly we're fucking Web3.
Yeah, it's not like if you've seen the sitcom the IT Crowd where they give her the internet. Oh, don't push that red button.
A lot of people at the moment call it Web 2.5, right? Like this onboarding process.
Whereas I'm already in Web 4.
Yes, and I think that's quite a good distinction because we're not there.
Yeah.
It'll take some time. It's a lot of education and a lot of adoption that needs to happen.
But and actually with Web 2.0, all the technology that made Web 2.0 possible really had already been around for 4 or 5 years before we say Web 2.0. And again, I point to what really I think sparked Web 2.0 was the .com bust.
Yeah, so like I 100% love the description of read, write, own. Yeah, so we're going from just reading and writing to owning. And with all the evolution and all the good things that come with it, Web3 still has its issues. You know, there are lots of issues when it comes to scalability, accessibility, and all that. And I'll be asking why are Web3 products poorly designed? You know, yeah, what harmful biases and trade-offs exist at the moment, you know, pushing, So
I've been in this kind of Web3 space since about 2017 or so. And what I found was that the Web3 space is like a planet in itself outside of planet Earth. In the sense that, you know, it seems like we're building inside of without not understanding what exactly the user wants. I was actually speaking at an event the other day, and I was speaking about the way we're going to be able to scale the metaverse is when we understand the process of consumer behavior and how to essentially onboard consumers onto a new technology to make them understand this is what they need, number one, but also to be able to empower them to what they need. So for example, with 3, if I ask my mother to get herself a MetaMask wallet, it's just a beautiful nightmare. She would forget her secret. She'd be like, what is that secret? I can't remember it. It's in my book somewhere. But you know, like it's also kind of how do we make it easy for people to kind of be onboarded, and you know, simple things like passwordless entry is for me is a good step in the right direction. To like digital identity is a good step in the right direction. I think what we may have done is maybe built stuff that is way too far ahead beyond where the consumer is today. You know, if you ask someone to switch from Instagram to a decentralized social media, there needs to be an obvious benefit from them, you know, for them straight away. And you know, even the guys at Meta have tried to decentralize Instagram, and it's been really, really tricky. And so I really think it's kind of like that disconnect between the builders and the users.
Yeah. I definitely agree with your last statement, but I would actually say onboarding is going to be critical.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the term is really in use much anymore, but we used to talk about a killer app. There was that one app that got, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy a computer because I need to use this app. I'm gonna get my web browser because I need, and you know, for Web 1.0, the killer app was, at first it was Netscape. You know, that was the browser, that was the, oh, I can use it, I can download that. It was Yahoo for a while, and then it was Google for a while, and then it was YouTube. So until Web3 finds that killer app that everybody, not just tech geeks, not just fintech geeks, but everybody wants to use, I don't think we're going to see Web3 become a thing. And even then, I don't know that anybody's going to say, oh, I love this new Web3 killer app. They're just going to say, oh, I love this new killer app.
Yeah.
They may not even know that it's Web3.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But until we find that thing, that idea, if I knew what it was, I'm sure I'd be a tech bro billionaire by now. You know, but I don't know what it is yet.
I mean, I think, sorry, it goes back down to like that user. What is the user wanting right now? What does the user need right now? And what problems do they need solving right now?
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about this. I was like, imagine if someone could really, really help me to actually sort out my messages. I have too many messages and too many emails. And I think that's, you know, maybe the answer is the super app that puts everything in one place, that actually advances us to Internet of Things, you know, that, you know, doesn't actually allows us to move away from our mobile.
Well, and that's why the decentralization will be so critical, because right now the reason you can't do that with all your messages and with all your emails and all your everything, your Facebook and Twitter and all that, is because they don't talk to each other.
Yeah,
there's no interoperability. And until we really put an emphasis back on standards, there's no technical reason that Twitter messaging can't communicate with Google messaging, can't communicate with Facebook, can't communicate with LinkedIn. There's no technical reason. It's because they don't want that, because they're afraid people will leave.
We're still on design and experiences. The next question has to do with approach. And just to clarify to the audience, when we talk about design, we're talking about end-to-end, not just the visuals, but the experience too. There's a definition I like so much about design, which is design is what we make possible. Design is how things should work. And right now, this question is to Arnaud, and we want to understand how your company Dispatch, what's your approach to creating your experiences and building out those unique experiences for your users.
Yeah. Oh. All right, that'll work. Great. Yeah, so I think it's going to piggyback on what you guys were saying. So we started as a messaging protocol, a non-chain messaging protocol 2022, early 2022, the Web3 hype is maximum, to the moon energy everywhere. Oh my gosh, back to what you were just saying, you can send messages to a wallet. Fuck yeah, this is great, I got MetaMask, I got Coinbase, I got whatever, and I can message. Very quickly, customers asked us, and we realized, like, actually, the value is not in transmitting a message from point A to point B, it's the transaction behind it, which puts us to commerce, right? Oh, what if it's a message that sells something, right? Kind of looks like an ad, because it was ads, right? Except that it started to look like it's an airdrop, like I don't like it. So the end user were not liking it. What was more like annoying is the market we could address was actually pretty small, which goes back to how do we onboard people on wallets? How do we like make them understand what it is? How do we make that process easier? And our mantra has constantly be like, serve shit people are used to, use every day, right? Like don't ask them to go install that weird thing and so on. And so we did that with Dispatch with like, it's a very simple onboarding thing. You put your email address or like your phone number, you get like a text message and boom, you have a wallet. You don't have custody on it, but that's fine. You still can access Web3 and you can have usage for all those NFTs, right, that you were like craving to get or products you wanted to buy. So we did an event in Q1, a pretty big one, New York City, show fields, big store, physical event, right, to even more like talk to users, see how they approach the product. We had like 18 brands there. We had Lacoste, we had Joe Coffee, Night and a couple others, right? Like sellers really using Dispatch to sell, and people would come, flash a QR code, and it would pop that really nice interface where you can either create a wallet if you don't have one, just with your email, or connect your wallet and then buy the stuff, and then walk away from the store with a physical product. And it was great. People loved it. People were like, oh my gosh, wow, there's utility in Web3, this is cool. We saw a couple hundreds of items, which was great. Then I looked at the data, and guess what I saw? 78% of people picked the credit card option. And we're like on a Web3 Teaching conference, right? That's NFT NYC earlier this year. Most people, and I heard it during the conference, like, you like a product? Yeah, I do. I wish it was Apple Pay. I guess you're right. And so that's what we did, and that's where we are now, right? So we shovel those experiences in ads, in regular ad formats, and we serve them Apple Pay. So there's no more wallet involved, right? So the users don't even realize it's happening on the blockchain, because it is happening on the blockchain, right? It actually issues an NFT, it sends a request to the OMS of the brand, so your order gets fulfilled. And it keeps a trace on chain with data that you own as a user. But I don't put the fucking Web3 shit in your face before you buy, right? I show you something you want to buy, Apple Pay, done, and then, oh my gosh, I got an NFT now? Oh, I can claim it, I can put my email and whatever. And so, anyway, that's been the process we went through to really use the technology behind Web3 rather than like Web3 as like something that would appeal to customers, because it doesn't. I mean, today, it really doesn't. It's quite the opposite. I think it's a repulsive. Even if the tech is awesome, it's absolutely awesome, and I love it, and it's so great. So that's the approach.
Also, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a great take on making good products in Web3, or at least good products using Web3 technology that people don't care what it is, right? They just want to use a great product. I think there's another take to this, which the products can also be the ecosystem around something. It can be a community. Web3 is very community-based. And so if we look at that, what is onboarding like? What is experience like for those communities? And sometimes they can be, you can have huge barriers. You can have closed communities that look like they're just some special club, and you get in there early, and great, you can profit from that, literally. Anyone coming later sometimes feels excluded, but there are other communities where they're welcome all the time, and you can contribute. You can have a part to play in what they're trying to do. Of course, these are DAOs, and I think DAOs are wonderful things when they're managed and they're open. But they can also be really confusing. They can be difficult to get into. You don't know where you can get traction, who to speak to start contributing. So there's a whole management around that needs to take place. There's some really clever platforms that now onboard users to different ecosystems and give them a taste. I love this model. And this isn't necessarily serving average Joe on the street who's not necessarily within crypto, but it's an innovative way of getting someone who is in crypto or maybe just curious and has been dabbling to then start trying different ecosystems. Check out Rabbit Hole if you haven't already, Rabbit Hole GG. Really nice way of getting people into different pockets and different ecosystems, incentivizing them, rewarding them for doing that. And of course, Rabbit Hole, what a great business model, because then they can bring in other ecosystems and say, hey, we'll promote through various goals and bounties through our platform to get more users. So I really like that way of basically giving an educational experience to the onboarding, to reward and incentivize, and actually creating a business model through it that benefits obviously everyone as well. So just a different take and slant on things, looking more at the community aspect.
Thanks. Okay.
And maybe, yeah, piggyback on what you just said, and you said that as well. It's like, which user are you talking to? Are you addressing the Web3 degen? Are you addressing like a Web2 consumer? What type of consumer is that person? Where does that person live? What do they do? Which website do they go to? Or is it metaverses? I think that's absolutely key. And then what do you sell them? And how does Web3 actually have something to do with it, right? In our case, it's the data. Like you guys probably heard about GDPR and cookies decaying and people pissed about their data being in different places. Well, you own it in our case, which is the why behind Web3. Because to your point, we could do all of that using solely Web2, right? Web3 helps us with like, to actually guarantee, no, Jason, this is your data. You can access, you can remove it, you can decide you don't want to share it with right?
And it's used to help me. We're going to talk more about accessibility in a little bit, but one of the kind of the penultimate idea of accessibility is this idea of universality. And the way I try to describe universality, because it's still kind of a nebulous term, but to me what universality means is that I don't adapt to an app or a product. The product or app adapts to me. It meets my needs. I don't have to figure out how to meet its needs to get it to work the way I want it to. And that's what I think the dream of Web3 will be when, there's, if you ever read a book on user experience, the greatest book on user experience is by a man named Steve Krug. It's called Don't Make Me Think. And really, that's the goal. I don't want to have to think about using my digital devices. I just want them to work and make my life better.
Thank you. I love that. I love the title. I should get the book too. I should get the book. I'll stay with you, Andrew. The next question is, what opportunities exist with building with well-designed Web3 products? What opportunities and ROI exist with building great Web3 products?
Yeah, I mean, there's such depth to this one. I'll try not to go too far down into that, but I think, let's say, what are the value propositions for anyone coming from Web 2, right? If you're looking at Web 3, then what's this for me? I see, lots of various things. It looks a bit confusing, maybe a bit scammy. Well, what you do get, and I'm going to reiterate on the community aspect, because there's a fantastic opportunity to build communities that can advocate and validate your product really quickly, and basically act as your army for your product. And they can take a financial stake in that, they can take an emotional stake, if you like, if they're helping in that community to move that product forward. But really, now is the rise of communities, online communities, to then work on products, to build products, to take a stake in that product. And for me, anyone who's in Web 2 and then really thinks about the way that their models work, and they're thinking, oh well, we need to get our daily active users up, but first of all we'll raise the money and then we'll worry about that. Well, this is a way of doing both at the same time, and launching tokens that can give someone a stake in a great idea and be there right at the start, and then advocate for you and take some reward. I love that approach because really that's a fantastic model for giving everyone an opportunity to move things forward, rather than it being this sort of closed thing where just the VCs and maybe the founders benefit from it. So for me, that's the main thing from a Web 2 perspective. I'll stop there because I'm sure other people have got an opinion on that as well. But anyone else?
Yeah, so the opportunities that exist from building properly.
I think the opportunity really is actually about enabling people to be able to spend more time with their families and actually love technology. I think that's what people are really hungry for. There's a book called Brand Lit, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, by one of the kind of designers of Apple. And in the book it speaks about how, previously, companies spend a lot of money on advertising to be able to get products to consumers. What's happening is that companies are now spending a lot of time on products and consumers who are now building up the brand. So I think what's going to win is actually what resonates well with consumers. Consumers want to connect with one another more than ever before. Consumers want to connect with brands more than ever before. So I don't think this thing of community is just new to Web3 space. I think it's actually happening outside of the quote-unquote Web3 space. And it's actually about who does that the best, and who actually touches the hearts and minds of the consumer in a way where they are able to do things and connect with people that they mostly want to connect with, and actually not be on their phones all the time. Personally, I don't think I will be on my phone, but I feel like I have to because technology is actually made me so reliant on it. So the solution that we see next is like actually how do we make people's lives easier in a different way than it was maybe earlier on.
Yeah, it's interesting talking about spending more time with your family. It's about becoming happier. I read a lot of science fiction. I'm not too proud to admit it. And I just on the trip over here, I get Clark's magazine. It's a sci-fi magazine, and actually I listened to it as a podcast. And there was this amazing story called the Algorithm. And it's a story about this woman is a first person. She's talking about there's this new self-help program app that everybody's using. Everybody, all her friends are like, you got to use it. She's like, yeah, I don't even have a self-help app. But then her boss is like, no, I want all my employees to use it. It's a great app. And so she starts using it. And it feels very invasive at first, and it's like collects all the data it can about her. And like, what do you know, those stupid, well, what are you interested in type of stuff? And she's like, oh, I want to paint. Like I haven't painted since high school, but sure, I want to paint. And then it starts giving her advice every day. And it's like, oh, you should probably try eating this tonight. I think you'd like it. And it puts the ingredients right into her shopping list. And she buys it, and she's like, oh, actually, yeah, that was really good. That was a really good meal. And then, oh, you should get up half an hour earlier and paint. And okay, and so she does, and she gets up and she's like, oh, well, that made me feel good. And over the next several months, she's doing all these things, and it's invasive, but it's not like pointing a gun at her head. Everything it recommends makes her life better, makes her happier. Even to like it advising her that her boss is going to be out for the afternoon, so she can take a late lunch and come back a little later, and nobody's going to notice. But then it comes out that actually the app is an AI that these university students built, and all they told the AI was, do something to make people happy. And it came up with this app, and this app was improving everybody's life. But of course, as soon as everybody finds out it's AI, it's like, oh, I don't know if I trust that. I'm happy now, but And so that's the quandary we're in. We want to be happier. We want technology to make us happier, but we're also very distrustful. Who's controlling us? What do they want from us? And that trust is really the hardest thing I think we're going to have to overcome.
I was going to say, I think it's also like more of a leadership problem and the history of leadership behind technology. You look at like obviously like ChatGPT and the kind of majority stakeholders in that. And there's a lot of lack of trust in those leaders. And so I think, the more we are able to build solutions that truly actually are there to not take away people's jobs. I think the genuine concern is that AI is going to wipe away all of our jobs. And we're not going to have most of the planet then because everyone's starving to death. But actually, if we can actually build these technologies to make people more productive, to focus on what they really want to do, we would actually find that it would actually help us, live a better world and have a better life, and also it would allow us to be rewarded for those things as well, rather than us having to spend, hours on admin or hours on things that don't really matter to us as humans. Yeah, exactly. Like things I think about my life and I think I'm so busy, but most of my life is actually admin. So the technology helps us do most of this admin. And actually, I can't hire enough human beings to be able to help me do my personal admin. And so can technology actually do that? Maybe that's the kind of sweet spot for Web3. It's not just about the monetary side of things. Yes, that's important, but also it's actually how do I have enough time to spend with my family members and actually do things that actually makes me happy, to make me think about my life. Not eliminate how to think, but actually to focus on how to get to my thinking time. Yeah, and so yeah, that's really
Thank you so much, guys. And so we've talked about so far where we've come from Web 1.0 to 2.0, 2.5, to Web 3. We've also touched on the issues with bad design. We've talked about the opportunities that exist. We've talked about our approach to actually designing properly. Now, with all this we know, can we predict the future? 10, 20 years time, what will Web3 look like?
Yeah, well, 20 years is a really tough question. I mean, I'll tell you what I hope will happen.
Yeah.
And I think for me, at the end of the day, Web3 is a shared database. That's how I explain it to my daughter, to my wife early on. And she was like, what is that shit? It's a shared database. It's a database nobody controls, right? And so it's useful for all kind of stuff. It started being useful, perceived as useful for Bitcoin and even, oh my gosh, I don't need banks anymore. And then for messaging, and then for AI, I think there will be a huge usage here, not in like running the algorithm. That would be insane, absolutely insane. It wouldn't work with the existing state of blockchain, but like the output of it and what you grant access to that algorithm. For commerce, obviously, you have the commerce guy in the room, like that is huge. Like you can have a shared shopping bag that actually is real right now, that exists, right? And so what I hope is, like we'll see less and less big companies owning a huge amount of your life and your history, because more and more of what we're doing is online, right? And that will be more in control of the user in a way where people will actually use the functionality, right? Because that's the thing. It has to be easy for people to opt out, opt in, decide who get access to this or that. And I think that's one of the big promise behind Web3. Whichever form it takes, it's impossible to predict. But that I think is essential, and that's what I would love to see. Yeah.
Andrew?
All right. I love this question. 20 years, you say? Okay. I mean, I think 20 years we're going to see a lot more token incentivization day to day. I think that's coming. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's almost like your attention is being bought and then rewarded. Is there some kind of feedback loop there? Will it be always positive for us behaving as humans naturally? I don't think any of us know, but we should definitely talk about it. But I also think that there's room for people where, actually, you know what, we should be extracting value from companies when we give them time. So is that such a bad thing? We just need to be mindful of what that looks like, and obviously not digging a trench for ourselves and humanity by putting ourselves in a box, right? And all of our behaviours are really sort of incentivized. So that's one thing that I think will come about, maybe within the next 5 years. The second thing I think would be, again, going back to the rise of communities. I'd really like to see a kind of collaborative Upwork, if you like, a version of Upwork which is a DAO. And there are some DAOs that kind of do a little bit of product, but I've not seen them really organise themselves in the way that all this global talent, so much global talent, doesn't matter where you are, come together. Discord is the platform of choice right now, whatever it's going to be in 20 years' time, but being able to coordinate and organise to a very finite level the product development, where you can just go in and you can pitch for a bit of work. And there are some platforms that let you do this to some degree. They're developing, they're quite good. D-Work is one. Basically then you've got a whole beautiful product built by people around the world that might be just doing this as a side gig, but they can dip in and out of this work when they want to because it suits them, and it all comes together as one. And if that can happen and will happen, I'm sure, that would be a beautiful thing, because something like Upwork is very centralised. So let's flip it on its head. Let's go for more decentralisation. Let's organise people, get everyone working together, beautiful minds work together on their terms. I think that's the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. I'll be honest with you. When I got the invitation to do this, I was like, okay, I really need to make sure I'm as versed in Web3 as possible. It's something that had been, something I'd read, but it wasn't like my primary focus. And I didn't know a lot about DAOs. And quite frankly, that was the thing that excited me the most. Because I would describe myself as a philosophical anarchist. That is, I believe highly in the individual and the individual's rights, but I also believe highly in the individual's need to be a part of the community, their commitment and their responsibility to the community. And that, in human terms, really difficult, because if you don't have leaders, oftentimes that just leads to people exploiting each other. And a DAO, in a way, is like a computer anarchist community. Everybody, you can do it so that pretty much everybody is equal, or everybody's at least equal by their input into the DAO. And that really excited me. And, so my happy prediction is something like, imagine a news organization without anybody above the journalists and editors. Everything is controlled by a DAO, and people write articles, and people edit articles, and those are automatically published, through that. So you cut out all of the parts in between, and it's just about the people writing the articles and people editing the articles. Because if you're not a writer, editors are the most important people on the planet. Just in case you were wondering, without an editor, I couldn't write. But then they're rewarded based on how much they write, and maybe their input is by how much they write, by how much people, maybe some sort of Patreon system where people say, hey, this is a great article, I'm going to give you 25 cents, or I'm sorry, 50p, let's say. And that's how it generates money. Now, on the downside, what I'm afraid of in 20 years is really for my kids, because right now, everything they're doing is being recorded in some way, shape, or form. Every post they make, every Discord discussion they have, and I've learned a lot from them, because they're actually far more paranoid about that than I have ever had a day to be. I used to post everything about here's my opinion, so screw you. And now I understand, that can come back to haunt you. That can get you canceled in this world. That can get you, and I don't even think we've seen the tip of the iceberg yet, because most of us grew up in a time when that wasn't true. And my kids, though, in 20 years' time, they may have some random comment they made 20 years ago brought back against them and used against them. And so NFTs, non-fungible, you can't change it. Blockchain, you can't change it. And so that what is it, indelible mark being there, I worry about that coming back to haunt. So.
I actually believe that in 20 years, what we will see is probably a mix of technologies. So how do we kind of use AI, extended reality, Internet of Things? I think there's going to be a big drive of Internet of Things. And actually, this push for personalization, this push for ownership, is actually going to lead us into this kind of place of mixed technologies. I don't think that AI would be able to work and be able to be supercharged without blockchain technologies and AR technologies and so on and so forth. So it's actually a combination of technologies that actually add value and add utility to the consumer. So just imagine a world where you're able to actually simplify your workload, but also be able to earn. And just as I said, there's kind of dangerous parts to it about tokenizing every single thing. But that way you're actually able to truly see the value for what you're doing. So there wouldn't be an issue if you are doing X amount of time you're not producing, and so you will be actually rewarded for what you produce. So yeah, that's kind of where I see it.
Thank you so much. Please, can we give a resounding round of applause to Thank you so much, guys. And now it's your turn to ask any questions. Okay, so when you get up to answer, can you, your name and your company, just introduce yourself briefly and then, yeah, your questions, yeah. So I can see you. Okay, yeah, he can. Yes, please. Go on, please.
Do I need a mic? I can just speak.
Yeah, you can. Okay.
So thank you very much. Really, really interesting panel. I was on my phone most of it, but the discussion was really good. So thank you for your time. I just wanted to ask you actually. You said your favorite phrase was "I think, therefore I am." What do you think? So I'm being an operations person. I believe action speak louder than words because talk is very cheap and execution is everything. So do you think I act, therefore I am? What do you think?
So actually, like I actually, I think that I act, therefore I am actually starts with me thinking, therefore I am, if that makes sense. Yeah. So everything actually starts off with my mindset. Somebody thought one day that I'm going to create something called Ethereum and, to essentially make there to have access to, for kind of a specific currency for more people and proof of ownership and whatnot. And so it starts with my thinking, it starts with my mindset. And so that's why I said, I think therefore I am. So I can act, if I act without any thoughts behind it, then I'm acting seamlessly without any kind of philosophy or thoughts behind what I'm doing.
It could be subconscious. It could be like, it could be subconscious and it could be like ingrained behavior. So you may not necessarily may not be premeditated or thought, but you're being reactive. That could be stored knowledge.
I'm not talking about like actually me proactively. So proactively wanting to do something, or proactively wanting to make a change on something. There's a lot of subconscious things that we do as human beings. So like, for example, driving. Sometimes you just drive to your old house and you don't realize, but that's a subconscious thing. So for me, it's more I am a woman of value rather than I am driving to my old house.
Thank you.
And not to self-aggrandize, but I will. I think that's why I chose to be rather than to see. Because when you talk, you're projecting what you want people to think about you, how you want them to perceive you. When you act, that's how you are. That is to be. And that's why that phrase I think has always stuck with me. Is I don't want to be known by my words. I want to be known by my actions.
Questions? Okay. Oh, I thought you wanted to ask a question. Okay. All right then. So if there are no other questions, I think.
Do we have time?
I think we have.
We have some time?
No, we've gone over.
We've gone over.
Yeah.
I was going to say, let's ask the audience a question then.
Okay. Yeah. So she has to.
Okay. Let's go.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, for attending.
big thank you for all of our panel. I'm just going to turn off the lights, sorry. For your support and for some wonderful moderation. We're just going to get a quick photo of the panel. And on this vein, just for everyone's knowledge, in this room we will be having our final talk of the day. It's actually all about service design and decentralization. So I'll just get the slide there. Thank you everyone. And as all of you panelists are interested in user experience, if you want to hang around and listen to Adam, it's your choice, but it's going to be really
I'm sorry, you're okay. In front of you. Okay, sure. You're okay.
Thanks for answering.
Got here at 12 noon maybe? Yeah. Yeah.
Download it and I'll just...
You're just gonna stand here, or?
I don't know. Is there something going on the other one as well?
Most likely, I think it's continuous. When I walked out there, I didn't see it being Melissa, but.
Should we find out what's going on? More of, I think it's going to be similar theme in here for the next one. Might be something different.
Amazing. Well, everyone, please put your hands together for Adam Delin. He's the design director over at Orange Innovation. So we're bringing the perspective of service design and the shared digital ownership of brands. So I'll hand you straight over to him. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thanks, Miles. Thank you very much. Okay, well, I was going to do the big arena, but we're going to be like internet and closed now. So I am Adam, the name design director at Orange. Where do you want me to be?
If you go that side, so you're not in front of your slides. One little tiny more. There you go.
Okay, I'll just stand into the. Cool. Okay. And this is starting possibly a bit behind schedule. I'm okay, so with like
Yeah, just take your time,
Yeah.
get through your presentation.
So it's got to talk today about so Web3 service design, so approaches to Web3 using service design. But I'm going to speak from sort of perspective I know, which is working for a large corporate where Web3 is not that easily adopted. And the area that I work with is the innovation arm of Orange. So Orange is not a network in the UK, it's a large European network. We operate in 28 countries in Europe, Middle East and Africa. what networks do is connect stuff. They connect factories, hospitals, ports, airports, infrastructure, roads, vehicles, basically connects it pretty much anything, any stuff. And the thing you quickly realize, approaching this from a service design point of view, is that generally people, actors in an ecosystem, are looking at the same stuff from different perspectives. Okay, so we're perhaps looking at something like supply chain, where something moving through a supply chain is being handled by different actors along the way, but essentially it's the same goods processing through the system. Or perhaps it's a distributed infrastructure like water flow management, right? When you're monitoring the flow upstream through the system, downstream. So we were approaching this thinking, this is a kind of decentralized service. We have this shared resource that everyone is using, a common resource, and developed a methodology to approach this from a design perspective, taking inspiration from design thinking. I will come back to some methodology towards the end, but the point we keep going back to is the question of ownership, because fundamentally we're talking about this token economy, this ownership economy. It keeps coming back to this question, and you've probably heard it 50 times today. So ownership in a sort of fairly generally accepted perspective is conceived of as a combination of rights. It's an aggregation of rights, privileges, powers that allows a person or an entity, someone to enjoy the benefits of some asset or property that they own, right? And to dispose of it, they just sell it or pass it on. So this is a generally accepted view of what ownership means. It's notable that it doesn't include anything like responsibilities of ownership. That's not within this sort of definition. But it sort of poses the question, when we talk about Web3, my keys, my crypto, is it like property? Is it my keys to my house? Is that the same sense of ownership? And I think we already know from Web 2 that that's not entirely the case. It's a bit more complex than that. We understand in Web 2 that if you own an asset, the way it works is that some attributes of your asset are extracted. You get some data, some metadata that is perhaps shared with an orchestration mechanism, maybe a platform, something like that. So if you drove an Uber, it's information about the availability and location of the vehicle that's of interest about that vehicle that is shared and matches you up with a passenger, and everyone's happy. So the point being really that your ownership is not strictly your exclusive privilege to enjoy the asset, right? Your ownership here really depends on the mediation by someone else. In fact, it's the coordination at scale of all the ownership that allows these platforms to extract some value, this economic surplus that they refer to as the immaterial labor that they're collecting. And it's not to pick on like the usual suspects, it's just that increasingly as we unbundle ownership in our lives, we increasingly move ownership into services. So whether it's your car, whether it's property, entertainment, your finances, your health, your relationships, all this stuff of experience is being atomized into services, which we do not fundamentally own. At least the value of them is not because we own them, it's thanks to these digital platforms. So clearly with Web3, this changes the dynamic. With Web3, we've got the advantage that, we've got the difference that we have the verifiability. So we have the underlying protocols that make sure that we can attribute assets to individual people or to entities. So we have this idea of a claim to an asset. A good example, I think, is at the protocol layer. If you think of protocols, take maybe Filecoin, it's because you've got the ownership of coins that you participate in basically in the coordination of that common asset. So in the case of Filecoin, you're participating in the coordination of distributed storage. I think Web3, in my interpretation, is the experience layer of built on protocols, built on primitives. So it's something where we connect with real world assets, because most of the on-chain stuff is very much on-chain closed token economic systems. They work well within themselves, but Web3 opens it out to the real world. We connect with actual data. An example of a Web3 platform might be something like DEMO, Digital Infrastructure for Mobile Objects, I think it means, which essentially is a Web3 platform which collects it uniquely identifies your vehicle, a vehicle of any brand, through its vehicle identification number, chassis number. and it gets that information about the vehicle, about the vehicle's usage. So this is clearly a way of sharing this resource collectively. You get ride share from it, you have a ride share service, but because it's a collective resource, you can have creative entrepreneurs come in and create other services. You can have the maintenance service for the vehicles, you have battery swapping. Something that networks are interested in is V2X, so vehicle to anything, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure. These are the sorts of capabilities that you can build out because you have this shared resource. So in the shift from the sort of the Web 2 to the Web 3, we're already shifting the idea of ownership from, it's not entirely owned by me, it is externalized, it's on the planet, it's digitalized. But within Web 3, we regroup that as a sort of collective, as a collective resource, okay, that can be exploited by the community of participants. So this is all good, but for brands, so brands and companies and sort of the place I work in are not decentralized in themselves. They're unlike Demo. They have internal organization, they have a legal boundary, they tend to internalize their customer data. So they're kind of quite the opposite. And what does it actually mean for a brand to get into Web3 is a bit paradoxical. In fact, in some sense, you're going to have to dissolve your brands into Web3, but obviously lots of people are trying, lots of people are approaching this in different creative ways. I'm just going to show a couple of light examples, not the ones we're personally involved in from our side. The French supermarket chain Carrefour last year launched an NFT series called NFBs. You could buy these as part of the experience, and they would get you access to an educational game in the sandbox. And you can learn there about the connection between biodiversity, food production, and pollinators. And interesting facts like the population of bees has declined by 90% in the last 60 years, which is scary when you also consider that 75% of the produce we eat is pollinated by bees. So it's a worrying situation. You're learning about this, and the proceeds of this activity are then given to this foundation, which helps beekeepers in keeping bee colonies alive. So it's a simplistic Web3 example, okay, it's not super sophisticated, but the point here is that what's happening is there's an alignment of the values. You've got the consumer also who would like to buy produce, and it's not just honey, okay, they pollinate lots of different produce. The retailer that would also like to have full shelves, and producers that want to sell their goods. So there's an alignment of interest around this common dependency on the pollinators, which is the thing being valued through this NFT, right, to this Web3 artifact. So far so good, but not everyone's kind of ready to jump into the metaverse. You know, maybe another strategy would be to align your your Web3 strategy with existing behavior. So you've possibly seen or heard this one mentioned earlier today, Starbucks loyalty program. Starbucks obviously is their NFT loyalty program. I think it's only running in the US as far as I'm aware. So in this instance, you can earn rewards through customer journeys and sort of buying the coffee. You can also purchase, I think they have exclusive ones, and you accumulate these Odyssey stamps, which are very similar to your loyalty stamps, except in this instance they are NFTs. So they provide the same benefits. You can still get your 10th cup of coffee free, whatever, but you can also unlock additional Web3 type benefits. I think they offer things like visits to coffee farms in Costa Rica. So I think this is a really interesting example from the point of view that in effect what you're doing is taking traditional internal CRM customer insight, okay, this is the behavior that customers are exhibiting in purchasing coffee, and you're giving it to them. You're externalizing your traditionally very valuable customer insight and you're giving it to the user in their wallet because it's what's being tracked in terms of the NFT usage. So this is kind of important because customers are always making these consumer choices. There's always consideration as to whether they buy cost-conscious or premium. Do they care where it comes from, the provenance? Is it fair trade? Does it contain ingredients like palm oil? Do they care? I mean, maybe they don't, or maybe they'd like to care, but cost of living means that they can't make that preferred choice. So there's a lot of ethical considerations going into customer decisions at point of purchase. Just go on a slight tangent here. This is an old example, an old prototype built by the Edinburgh University Futures Institute. It's a coffee machine, as you can see, but it's got a Raspberry Pi built on top, which has a camera, which can scan a QR code, and it's got a wallet, and it's connected. So when you come to this coffee machine, and you buy your coffee with Bitcoin as it happens. You also vote. You have to vote at this point to decide where do you wish the next supply of coffee to come from. Do you want the Costa Rican supply or the Kenyan roast? You make a decision about where the coffee, the provenance of the coffee, and that will affect the price of your cup, depending on the balance of voting that the machine is keeping track of. So it's going to be the more expensive Kenyan roast, which is perhaps fair trade, that's going to be slightly more expensive. So you're surfacing really, you're surfacing something about your supply chain within at the moment of the consumer decision. Now, I don't know if Starbucks are planning to roll out bit baristas anytime soon, but this is what the Web3 component could do. Perhaps they've already thought about this. Maybe this is what they're doing with their Odyssey program. But you're making tangible something within your supply chain to the customer at that point of decision. This is why I think it's so important that these sort of ethical considerations of what the user's doing are presented because they're being externalized. So you've got the value to externalization, and where does that go, that externalization? In Web3, this goes out into community, and the power of Web3 is the community. I'm not an NFT expert, I've just been at the panel with all the NFT experts, but pick your tribe. You've got, you've got the Bored Apes, you've got the Stoner Cats, Pudgy Penguins are there, Doodles, Bazooki, you've got Nouns, DAO, G-Money, and a Fulton Unicorn for good measure. And these are exhibiting really just the creativity of these communities. It's not just a visual community. Behind each of these projects are movies, animations, fashion pieces, festivals, retail outlets, music productions. There's an entire movement coming behind this creativity that these communities enable. So if you, as a brand, as a traditional, classic brand, are getting into these communities, you really need to understand where you're positioning yourself. It's much more about values fit than product fit to the market. You've got the ape with the Adidas there. So this is brands getting into this space and able to capitalize on the creative freedom, but you need to know what you're getting into. Okay, so talk about sort of the ethical side. Is it just about sort of greenwashing and presenting sort of interesting angles about your product, or could it go a bit deeper than that? I'd like to argue it could go a bit deeper, because companies are now obliged, or companies over a certain size, I think it's about $500,000 turnover or over 3,000 employees, are legally obliged to make ESG declarations. And those numbers are coming down, so in future these smaller companies will also need to make their ESG, their environmental, social, governance declarations. What this boils down to, what this essentially means is your business model sustainable? That's what it comes down to fundamentally. Is the way you operate sustainable? And if it's not, it all comes out in the annual report, you do all the accounting, and it looks not too great, so you have to go and buy carbon credits, and that's very complex and messy and not particularly reliable. So is there a way that Web3 could perhaps complement this ESG approach? And I think there could be, because there are many Web3 frameworks that provide clarity, provide transparency with regards to environmental services as sort of the general category. So looking at ecological assets like the use of land and so on. So for example, if the Carrefour NFTBs, instead of just donating to a fund that was for supporting bee colonies, what if they bought pollinator credits? These things exist. They're on-chain pollinator credits that are actively supporting these colonies. Or perhaps Starbucks have already thought about this. If they were looking to support regenerative farming practices on coffee farms, they could use the Regen network, which provides the MRV, that's the measurement, recording and verification of land use, or of ecological assets generally, but they can do this for farms using their rigorous processes. So you could give this transparency all the way down the supply chain in terms of what the consumer's actions are representing in terms of that business model. Not to sort of, sit on my high horse and say, everyone needs to do this. What's the situation for telco? That's where I'm speaking from. Networks have enormous energy impact. It's improving all the time. They're getting more efficient, but networks are very impactful. But what's that shared resource? What's that element, perhaps, that we have in common? It's probably the phone, right? We connect them. You've all got one, or more probably. On average, there are 2 phones per person on the planet. That's like 16 billion phones. And sadly, they're quite harmful, environmentally speaking, because a lot of them go into landfill. There are huge numbers of massive volumes of e-waste, and about 10% of that, which is a huge amount, is mobile phones. And only a very small proportion of this waste is actually recycled. And the numbers for recycling phones that are in use is just in the low percentages. And the problem of that is that this e-waste is toxic, so it pollutes groundwater, it's harmful to the environment, it's a huge waste of resources, and on top of that, you have to go and mine even more rare earth minerals. And being rare, these are highly contested, and you end up with conflict minerals, and these sorts of issues arising. So what if we could represent something that was what's this common resource? What if we could create some sort of device-bound as opposed to soul-bound, device-bound NFT that represents the mineral content of the devices in use? So this is uniquely identified to a device. You recognize what that make and model has in terms of sort of elements and minerals in use, and create a character, perhaps representing of your characteristics of choice, that is then connected with your mobile contract, right? So you want to connect the behaviors, going back to this consumer behavior activities with the NFT. So the behaviors, for example, could be at end of contract, typically a time when users upgrade their phone. Could we get them to ensure that they bring it into a refurbishment program, or could we say, no, extend the life of your phone another contract term, all right, prolong the life of it, that's going to be less harmful for everyone. And of course, because we've got this big addressable market of 16 billion devices, there's a community out there that we can tap into. There's a community that can mobilize, use the Web3 approaches to incentivize perhaps redistribution of phones to places where they're needed, or encourage local or regional refurbishment programs, or perhaps help manufacturers develop more modular devices that are more easily recyclable. So let's focus on being slim, perhaps more value in being modular for recycling. So that's the sort of the story around the ownership, which I think was hopefully trying to sort of capture that it's a shared participatory ownership in a common resource. Now I mentioned the methodology at the start, and this is how we approach this. In full transparency, we've used this more in a B2B context. I'm still grappling a little bit with how it applies really to sort of a consumer context. But I'll just take you through this sort of methodology, particular designers in the room, this might be of interest. And we approach space like in terms of an ecosystem. So an ecosystem might be your product domain, it might be a broader domain, maybe mobility or something like that. And we start with the actors in the ecosystem. It's a good place to start. Who's participating? And we look at the relationships between them. What are those actors transacting in terms of value today? Okay, without any Web3, but what are they transacting? And that could be goods and services, but it might also be intangible things like influence or attitude or governance or something like that. And then what we're really interested in thinking about is what are the assets that they operate and control. Okay, so perhaps this is, we might be looking at urban infrastructure, fixed mobility, we might look at curbsides, lampposts, street furniture, as they refer to it. Interesting to map what are those assets that are owned or operated by the actors. And then we get sort of creative with thinking about, well, what are the capabilities? Because if I've got a whole bunch of, let's say I'm a local council and I've got all the lampposts in my borough, that's great for street lighting, but they have electricity supplies. So lampposts could also provide curbside charging. They could also be useful for densification of your network coverage. So an asset, if you start to look at it, has a lot of capabilities. I came across a project recently in Sweden, which is found a way to use roads for filtering water, right? The water trickles through and they collect clean water. So there's an asset with a totally different capability. And in fact, we're surrounded by these capabilities. But the problem is the ownership is all proprietary. But if we could unleash them, if we could put them as a common good, we could then have this sort of creative invention around what we could use them for. And then finally, the use case, which is, I'll come into in just a sec, because it's a slight twist on the traditional design thinking type of use case. The way we run this is, I'll spare you not going through the entire workshop walkthrough, but the way we run this generally is as a workshop, so we use templates and blueprints, and we do some ideation at each stage and come up with interesting ideas. One we did recently with the Edinburgh's Futures Institute was around tourism. They have a lot of festivals, not just the main festival, they have a lot of festivals. So we did a workshop with university, with Decade, which is the decentralized digital economy academic program, Travel for Scotland, and our own design lab. looking at how they could come up with different uses of the assets within the city and its environs. So things like spaces, right, very important at festival time. So something that's a parking lot as an asset actually becomes a performance space as a capability in the festival, for example, as a simple example. And finally, on the use case, if you've done design thinking, you'll know the familiar, as a user, I need this, I want this so that I can do this. It's the classic sort of format. It's very me, I need something, I want it, all that. In our distributed services use case, we kind of flip that round and say, as an actor of this ecosystem, I have an asset. I own or I operate an office, something I've got. I'm limited to what I have today. And that can provide a capability. That's what we've ideated about. What are the possibilities of this asset in terms of this ecosystem that can provide benefits to somebody else? And the interesting thing is, once you start to look at that way, you start to see a number of beneficiaries adding up. So again, it's not very sort of self-centered in terms of what I get as a consumer. It's much more, what can I provide to that community? What collectively can we do with an asset? And I think that's where I'll leave it. The final word goes to Eleanor Ostrom, who thought about all this stuff sort of long before Web3 came along, thinking about commons and the use of common resources. So my conclusion, no bullet points, but it's basically this idea that ownership we need to start thinking of as a shared ownership. The individual ownership is not an aspect of Web3, it's shared. What makes that meaningful are the values that align, if you're a brand, with the processes, your business case, your business operating model, and understanding the community that you're working with, because bringing that community into that equation is how you're going to succeed. As I said, it's not alignment of product, it's not product fit, it's values fit, and starting to think how you engage your customers at that level. And I think, having rushed through that, I'll leave it there with a thank you.
Thank you. Put your hands together for Adam. We'll take a couple of minutes for any last questions of the day. This is the last session, so we have a little bit of freedom to open up. Perhaps I'll start with one from my side. How long has this learning curve been for you as a user experience practitioner in the kind of Web 2 enterprise world, and how has that learning journey been?
Few years, I'd say. I mean, it depends which bit you're talking about. I mean, there's a lot of blockchain stuff in telco environments, but it's very much at the technical level on networks, and things like sort of billing solutions can use blockchain for settlement. But the Web3 space, which, as I said, for me is a bit more the interaction with the end user, that's not very developed, hasn't really flourished a lot. This methodology we've been using within, as I said, it's been more used in a B2B setting. We've been using for probably, coming on a couple of years now. So it's evolved a little bit over time. It continues to evolve. I think it still needs to be, tried out and stress tested. But probably a couple of years. Sort of. And I will be honest. I think as a mainstream brand, we're not really there with Web3. I have to say, there have been some NFT launches. There's been a few sort of trials, but nothing really sort of substantial at this point.
So, do we have any other questions in the room? We have one at the back.
Thanks. This is Josh Lamar. I was wondering, from a kind of a UX perspective, like specifically focused on end users, what are the areas that you see as the most interesting and/or not fully understood in terms of topics or areas where you just wish you had more information from end consumers about?
Good question. I'd say it's a lot about their willingness, it's the adoption, right? I think they're at this point where, and this is why I think the methodology helps, because you're trying to find something that we have in common. You're trying to get the source of what it is that we actually want to do collaboratively. So I think, it's that understanding where they're at in terms of their willingness, their propensity to participate in something like that, and what is it that's of value. And we possibly don't have research methods that really look at that, because we're looking more at needs and how much will you spend and so on. And I think as this dynamic shift towards something more collaborative, we need to sort of more establish in our audiences and our segmentation what are kind of your values, so that we could then, and that's probably something we don't have as an insight these days. And as you develop the wallets and you know, the artifacts, the Web3 artifacts in wallets, you can start to get that information off chain. You could analyze that quantitatively. But at this point, we still don't have those numbers, not in size, not in sort of any sizable figures. So I think it's their willingness and participatory behaviour that we need to sort of discover. But I think at this point, it's more a case of looking at lead users, going into communities, and trying to get your head around it that way, rather than trying to do it too analytically, because I think it's probably the data may not tell us exactly what. But that's a very insightful question. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Josh. I'll stick my oar in for one more question.
Yep.
You're talking about decentralization today, and you know, and it's one facet of what Web3 is, right? And there's a multitude of technologies kind of converging to form this amorphous Web3 term. How are you and your team exploring some of the other technologies, your connectivity layer, right? The IoT, the 5G, the extended reality. How are you thinking about that in conjunction within what you can share with us?
Yeah. I mean, basically, the network role for that is as an enabler, right? I mean, the main thing the network is providing is the enabling of metaverse-type experiences, okay? And a lot of this has to do with delivering the capability to the right location. So a lot of talk in networks today is about edge technology, because you want high levels of processing and low latency. Of course, if you're doing, if you're connecting people across the world, if you're, whether it's gaming or if you're doing mission critical like remote surgery, it has to be sort of low latency. And this involves basically pushing stuff at the edge, doing a lot of processing at the edge to enable these sort of immersive or metaverse type experiences. So that's one area. I think the other aspect of it, though, where it links with the Web3, is that often you want that data to be secured. So it's all very well to sort of push it around the network, but if you're dealing with medical data, it needs to be secured. So that's where there's a role for, I think, to combine with the Web3 and the blockchain to ensure that the data that you are using is done. We had the decentralized identities panel earlier, so ensuring that you're using those access controls using Web3 in terms of what you are processing. And you can do a lot of things there, like like sort of federated learning. So if you deploy, let's say, you could train an AI model on some data, and then you could deploy that AI model. So you could sort of, like for medical data, for example, which is probably you can use federated learning to sort of train your models on the hidden data, basically. You're not actually declaring the data, you're just doing federated learning on a data set. And then the network is probably going to try to get the the AI model to then run at where it's required for doing whatever analysis. So it's very symbiotic, I would say, in terms of what networks are bringing to the table, but it is at generally quite a technical level, and not so much at the Web3 end user experience as things stand.
Thank you very much for your response. And are there any final questions from our audience today?
I'm around as well, if tomorrow as well, if anyone wants to catch up.
Well, in that case, please all of you put your hands together for our final talk of the day, and for Adam, thank you very much for your support today. Wonderful presentation. I can close everything down for you, so feel free to escape the stage. Just don't take my mic with you.
All right.
Or at least bring it back tomorrow. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I know it's been a long day, lots of content, and I hope you're all saturated with knowledge now. For those who are still here, you are all invited and more than welcome to join us on a boat going up and down the Thames. We're going to be checking out some of the sites, and generally just allowing some of the knowledge to probably just slip out the other side of your brain. A few drinks. But the one thing I want to state is if you are coming, there won't be food on the boat. There will be a bar, there will be drinks, and there will be music. But make sure you're fed. If you're hungry, get some food before you go. There might even still be some bits out there. We need to be at the pier for between 6:45 and 6:55, because we will be leaving pretty pronto at 7. But everyone is more than welcome to come. So please do come along. It's going to be fun. It would be great to have you there with us. But yeah, thanks from everyone here at Tech Circus, and to all of our speakers and all of you for attending, and everyone who's online as well for attending the event today. And we'll see you all tomorrow, bright and early. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking it was centralised, so it's sort of
Yeah.